Hello, everyone. I'm here with my good friends David and Cave, and today we're going to be discussing Marvel's newest show, Echo. A show that I initially was not excited for at all. Coming out of Hawkeye, did not. This character was very milquetoast to me. I wasn't invested. I did not care, and even as a diehard Daredevil fan who knows Echo from the comics, um, she's kind of Elektra 1.5, like not even 2.0, but like 1.5. Um, and I just was not particularly hyped about seeing this iteration of the character get her own show. I was like, why? And then I I saw that trailer, and masterfully, like Marvel sometimes does, they dupe you with an amazing trailer um, that had me all but convinced we would be getting something very close to on par with Daredevil, the Netflix series. And this is not that. This is a in spurts a kind of hollow imitation of that. Well, I'll give them credit where credit is due. There's some genuinely cool action here. Um, but am I invested? Is everything even happening for coherent reasons? No. And this is a show, like I'm sure Cave will echo that. Pardon the pun. Um, this is a show that was marketed to us as a really intense, gritty, and raw crime drama, much like Daredevil. And it's not that. It's more of a milk toast family drama that has some crime drama elements here and there. But fundamentally, this is not about a person who is actually on a warpath with Kingpin and wants to take over his criminal empire. Um, it's just it's so dumb. Like at the very beginning of this show, she comes back. First off, with all the like the intercutting and showing her scenes in Hawkeye, getting us here. She thinks that she's killed Kingpin. We cut to 5 months later, and supposedly she wants to take over his empire. And she's like, it's time for a queen, you know, just, can be read as a very pretentious kind of like feminist line, but whatever, sure. Um, she wants to take over his enterprise, but her goal in doing that is not to stay in New York, where the vast majority of his enterprise is, but to go to her hometown in Oklahoma and not to reconnect with any of the family or friends that she hasn't seen in like 20 years, but to try to strong arm her uncle into letting her send a message to Fisk's lackeys, which is code speak for a bomb, which is really dumb. Like, why are you blowing up a facility that's a part of an empire that you supposedly want to take over? And since you're essentially Fisk's top assassin and lieutenant, like you haven't developed a way to just talk with these people, even though you can't physically talk yourself. Like it's just goofy. It's goofy. It's dumb, and like from the outset, doesn't make any logical sense. I could go on and on, uh, but I'd like to hand the floor over to David, and he can give his initial thoughts on this show.
Thank you, Malik. Actually, I would like to go last only because first of all, I want to preface going into the show, I never wanted to see it. This was a show I was definitely going to skip. I always had the practice of everything that came out, everything Marvel came out since 2008 used to be really, really good. I'm going to go to the theater and see it. I'm not going to watch it anywhere else. I'm not going to listen to spoilers. Once that movie is out, I'm going to go and see it. Then they started doing streaming and Disney Plus shows. I'm going to go and watch those shows. And then we got Secret Invasion. And then it's like I saw episode 1 in Secret Invasion. I said, I cannot watch this show. This is so bad and incoherent. And how the hell does this going to the Marvels that you've been marketing for 7 months. So it didn't make sense. And the episode 1 was so bad, I had to finally call it quits. Black Widow was so bad that I said I really have to start being selective with what movies I started watching now. And so I haven't even seen the Marvels in theater. I mentioned like 2 days ago I was going to watch it. Life happens, and it's like the Marvels can wait. It can still wait. Um, but then going into seeing Echo, I was like, 100% I'm skipping this. And look, maybe I'm being a little bit too critical, and maybe the show isn't. I didn't think the show was going to be bad. I just thought I would not like it. I would not get into it. It's not for me because, hey, people have opinions, people have biases, and it's okay that something isn't made for you. The world doesn't revolve around you. And I was like, Echo's not a show for me. I'm not feeling it. I'm not relating to it. And not that I need to watch something that relates to me. I always find that a little bit, but on a very basic level, it's about relatability. So fine. But even there was nothing about the show in terms of how it was marketed, how it was talked about that interested me. I love that Kingpin was in it, Vincent D'Onofrio was in it. I love that there was talks about Charlie Cox, Daredevil being in it, but it just felt very fan servicey, and I did again through all the marketing, all the trailers, and all the teasers, and this, that, and the other. I didn't think I was going to like it, so I said, to each their own. I'll skip it. I think at best it will be entertaining for the people who do watch it, but it's not for me, so I'm just going to skip it. After Malik saw it and we discussed it, he basically strong armed me to watch this abysmal show. I really had to really had to power through these 5 episodes. I was so happy that the last episode was also the shortest of the 5. I wanted it to be over. It was that bad. There's very rarely that I see something this bad that I can sit down and have a discussion about it and say, like, because typically it's like, oh, it's bad, blatant statement. I'll talk about key points. No, I will sit here and dissect episode 1 from the first 30 seconds to the last minute about everything wrong with the show. It's that bad. You can dissect every minute, every 30 seconds, whether it's dialogue, whether it's the visuals, they're doing something wrong and it doesn't fit. It's that abysmal. And I have notes per episode. So I will go last, but that's what I'm going to start with. Echo is not a good show, and I could never recommend it to anybody. And to take a D-list, C-list character from the comics and make her a lead and not even care about the source material on top of that, it's pure and utter. First of all, disrespect to the character from the comics and disrespect to the source material, and two, it's very very clear that this has been a diversity hire push, and this is what happens when you get people, both showrunners, both writers, and both actors and cast. This is what happens when you hire based off of what you were bored with instead of hiring based off of qualifications. And I'll hand it off to Cave, and then we'll circle back, I guess. But no. I said my piece. Well, I'll hand it off to Cave, get his perspective, but then we'll really get into the nitty gritty of this because it's really, really disappointing show.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree with anything you guys have said. I will definitely say this show really, really got me excited. Before this show came out, I thought this was going to be a return to the Daredevil style. I thought the Marvel Spotlight banner that they talked about sounded great. We get to tell character-focused stories, and that's honestly my favorite part of any given story is the characters. I care about the characters the most. And I watched Daredevil seasons 1 through 3, The Defenders, and then Jessica Jones season 1. I haven't seen the rest of the Netflix shows, but from obviously Daredevil's, the best comic book project I think ever. I don't think there's really any debate in that. And so, them using that to get us hyped up about a new street level show, they knew what they were doing, you know? And it's been this new thing that Marvel does where they'll, cut up a trailer to make it look excellent, and then it's the worst one yet, We had Ant-Man 3, Secret Invasion, and then Echo, and all 3 of those had, pretty great looking trailers, and they were terrible. But as for Echo, I think at the core of this show, the problem is that it is something that nobody wants to see. It is set in Oklahoma for some godforsaken reason when they marketed it as a show set in New York about Echo taking over a criminal enterprise. And it's a show where she reunites with her family, but because of how short the show is and how poorly paced it is, I don't care about any of these characters. Every single side character in this show is terrible, and I don't want to see them again. Biscuits is 70 IQ at the highest, and I'm sorry, that's very specific, but that character annoyed the fuck out of me. And so I listen. This is a show. If you're here to figure out if you want to watch this show, by the finale, I was laughing my ass off by how bad this show was, and that's kind of all you need to hear. It was terrible. It had insanely terrible pacing. It took a character from the comics that was, in my opinion, pretty good, and made her the lead when she was never intended to be the lead of anything, but that still could have worked. And then completely butchered her comics origin and her comics powers, and made her into this, I don't even know what. And I will disagree with what David said about, I think the character is fine. I think the character is fine. I think Kingpin's fine. Everything else is terrible. Right? And I can't imagine being Marvel and like putting this out when you marketed a show about Echo taking over a criminal enterprise. And what I was expecting is this show functions as a prequel to Born Again, and we get, Echo builds up her criminal enterprise, and then there are two main villain factions in Born Again. But instead, what we get is a show that is 100% not worth watching, and that has nothing of value to offer, and overall is just the exemplification of everything wrong with Marvel post 2019. So I'll hand it off to Gary, or.
So I guess I'll get into the positives, the few positives that I do have out of the way. Obviously, like Daredevil, they didn't screw up. Like Charlie Cox just, he comes in, he has like a line or two, and is mostly just kicking ass. Again, he has like a fight scene with her. But to David's points, that scene that scene is part of a larger issue with this show, though, because while that fight scene is pretty well done, and I enjoyed the cinematography and it being overcast, and we have like obviously like the sun and background providing like a silhouette for them as they fight, like that was really cool. But we then go from that to Kingpin going, oh, well, you lasted longer with him than any of my other guys, so I'm going to make you my like top assassin. And I'm like, that don't that doesn't really track for me. Like she kills like one guy in that scene. um like the two like lackeys that she was with killed more people than her. um and like they want to try to have their cake and eat it too with this whole like she's a killer thing. But in that montage, that brief little bit of her shooting someone that we don't see on a tarmac, and then hearing the body drop, it's like this show wants to make this character a role model, for the Native American audience. Like this is their superhero. um and it's they don't really want to engage wholeheartedly with what she is, because I if I'm doing this show, like I would have actually shown the people that she was killing and humanized them, as opposed to that conveniently being off screen. And like we should simply be seeing more of that. Because like all the people that we see her kill in this show, are people that are actively trying to kill her or her loved ones. And so there's an easy justification there, and there's no real moral ambiguity. Um, but for us to actually see this person killing innocent people, like Punisher style, well, not even Punisher style, because he doesn't kill people that are necessarily innocent, but um, to to be executing people that are innocent, that are just late paying Fisk back on a payment, or people that have stolen from Fisk or something like that. Um, but like the show doesn't really do that, and she's more of a quote unquote assassin and hitman for him in name only, and in backstory that is largely obfuscated. And what they do choose to highlight um, is Fisk beating the shit out of some guy in a back alley for making fun of her when she was a child, and then showing her emulate that by running up and kicking him. Um, but even this relationship is very hokey and weird, because like to David's point, I was talking to him about this before we started recording. Um, she so he you know is essentially um her uncle, and is very very much like the main parental figure in her life for like a full 20 years, while grooming her to be this like unhinged and vengeful assassin. And yet he never took the time to learn all that much sign language to communicate with her himself. He's always had to hire like a mediator um, that he kills after an arbitrary amount of time. It's just goofy. It's really goofy, and um, it makes that relationship very hard to buy. There's a bunch of stuff like that's not just not really gelling, because the show can't pick a lane. Is it a crime drama? No, not really. Does she actually want Kingpin's criminal enterprise? No, not really. Um, is she even actively um, trying to engage and reconnect with her family? No, not really. But that's what we want to pretend the show's about. It's it's just a mess. But go ahead, David.
Would you guys prefer, because I want to talk about all the points you just mentioned, Malik, and all of them are great points. Um, but because I had to take notes, they were so bad. I have them by episode. So how does this sound? I will go through all the talking points I think are important when it's brought up chronologically in the episodes, and you guys can literally interrupt me and interject whenever you guys feel like it and add to that. How does that sound?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Great. Um, so I w- I only have, because I appreciate that you mentioned this, Malik. Let's talk about the good points first. The problem I have is I only have two things that I actually appreciated, and it's one of them's in episode 4, and one of them is in episode 5. So hold on, readers. We'll get there. I don't want to put the cart before the horse. But there are two things that I did like, and that's besides the bare minimum, like color grading. So, like, the color grading is spot on. The VFX that they have done, spot on, because they're really putting where their money in. But the problem I do have, that there are some VFX shots that you can tell suffered because they were VFX shots and they didn't do certain things practically. But I'll get to that. But let's start with episode 1, because the biggest problem I had with episode 1, and this is why I think episode 1 is on the top of the list of the worst episodes out of the 5. I think 5 is a very, very close second. But episode 1 is the worst, only insofar as I had no idea throughout the entire first, what was it? 25 minutes, where the hell any of these things were happening at all. I couldn't tell if it was modern day or not, unless you saw she was a literal child.
Yeah, like almost
Yeah.
a third of that episode is scenes taken out of Hawkeye.
No, that's not even the problem though. That's a montage. They go not a montage. That it kind of they go through this whole 25 minutes worth, and I look 25 minutes of the first half of the episode is there's Maya as a child, and this is her and her mom, and car crash, bang, bada bing, bada boom, and then things happen. I was like, oh well, she's older now. It's kind of getting to modern day, and then she's fighting Daredevil. I was like, wait, I forgot where this is. This now or is this 2007, 2008? What's going on? And then it cuts to Hawkeye, interjecting, like putting in Hawkeye scenes, and then it does that like really really quickly. It's just like it's a very mid first 25 minutes, like at the tail end of that, getting into the 30-minute mark, they're just shoving that in there. Oh, and now it's the modern day, and it's 5 months late. It's like it's modern day. Three things happen 5 months later. What the hell just happened?
Yeah,
Why did I just? Why did I sit through this? What the hell?
I didn't really have a problem with that because it's not like it's easy to tell things happen long ago and then they happen, semi recently. Like I don't need it to be perfectly defined when things happen. I just need to know a roundabout where it was, and I figured, the Daredevil fight scene was probably pre Hawkeye ish. Probably about like 3 months before Hawkeye or something. It's not a huge problem to me whether things are 100% defined in dates. I actually thought the first episode was the best of the five. So
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah,
No, I'm not saying that I need you to give me dates and addresses, but what I am saying is they are, and you see this consistently throughout the show. They're very inconsistent of what they want to tell you and how they want to tell it to you. Such as a perfect example of this is in episode, what is it, 3, where so for the first 2 episodes they're showing flashbacks of Native Americans who are in this cave. Not we don't know if they're aliens or not. What's the hell's going on? But now they're Native Americans. Okay. But then we get to episode 3 where it takes place in the 1800s, and then it's this black and white silent film, old-timey effect. It's like why didn't you do that so before the 1800s everything was color and everything was fine and you could hear your thing, and then the 1800s happened and then color just died and no one could say anything and you can't hear anything. And then after they getting into the 1900s, it's like it's very consistent of how, like, what is the tone you're trying to set? What is the theme? Because every time you establish a thematic or visual element, you contradict it with something new and something different that feels very like you got bored editing and creating your own show, so you needed to add something else that doesn't really elevate the show. It doesn't add to it. It just some may not. This is personal preference. May not take away from it either, but it is very very distracting. If you like, again, how are you jumping from the past, the undisclosed, undescript time prior to, it's assumed. I guess we can make the safe argument that it's prior to um, the Eastern colonization of the Americas. But then it's like, why does that have a certain aesthetic and why does that look a certain way? And then you get to the 1800s where they're all cowboys and Indians, and it's like it's a silent film. It's very bizarre, and but then they keep going back to that every single time you see a flashback of that ancestor. She's in black and white. She's in sepia in that filter, and it doesn't make any sense. And they do that a couple of times. There's also and even it's also this also goes into the little things. I think that's a larger thing, but there are little things in the show, such as is this in episode 2? I'm not entirely sure. Man, I have so many fucking notes. Um, yeah, because like in episode 2, there's an opening scene where these guys are in canoes, so it's further. It's still a flashback, but it's further along. So it's not the cave Native American people, but it's after that, some undisclosed time, which is fine. We just know it's in the past. Um, but even that was fine. You could hear everything, you can see everything. It was thematically and visually consistent, and then you get into the 1800s, and it's a goddamn silent film. Like,
Well, though,
it's
David,
weird.
there's something that was going on in that scene that I thought was interesting that I didn't see anywhere else in the show, and that's like kind of like oval lens they were using, or circular lens, spherical
And
lens.
that's what I'm getting at. It's in certain scenes and certain, like, for that it's fine because you're trying to give it this visual, it's a vision kind of aesthetic. That's fine. But then in just give me a sec. I'm having to, because I want people to listen to this and actually go back and watch the episodes and see what we're actually talking about, because um it's very, very bizarre because there's a conversation Mai ends up having with that guy, Henry, and every time you go into it's a mid shot of them, of their, like, their expressions and them talking, there is this bokeh kind of effect, or there's the you could tell the kind of lens that they're using, or filter on the lens that you're using, where the edge is the edge of it gives it a certain aesthetic of it is very visually pleasing. But the problem is every single time you get out of that in the same exact scene with the same exact characters, same exact everything, but it's a wide shot now, they're using either they're using a completely different camera or they're just not using the lens. And it's very bizarre, and it is a very, very subtle thing, and if you're not paying attention, you're going to kind of miss it. um but even when you're talking about these productions where they're spending this much money on editors and cinematographers and this equipment, and on the same days and in the same, you're shooting the same scenes and you can't even get the cameras right, and you're not filming that consistently, again, it's, to me, what that's telling me is you don't know how to make the right choices and stick with those choices. And you're constantly changing things up because either you don't know what you're doing or you're bored of your own material and you're trying to spice things up. Um, and it just becomes this very lazy thing, in that regard. Is there anything outside, while I'm trying to freaking find this? Is there anything else you guys have seen where it's been very, like, it's either thematically, not narratively, but visually, or even because Malik, you and I have discussed prior to this how they want to acknowledge that she's deaf and then not acknowledge that she's deaf and kind of forget that, or they will spontaneously and arbitrarily turn the sound down, the audio down for everything, and like, oh, this is Maya's perspective because she can't hear, and it's just, you go in and out of that kind of out of nowhere. Not that you need to prompt it, but it's a decision that you're making to say this is when we get Maya's perspective. Does very feel it is arbitrary, and it doesn't really add anything. And I'll go in depth further about not understanding the difference
Yeah,
between being deaf and hearing impaired. But
it's a
have you
weird.
noticed other things like that?
Yeah, it's a weird, goofy kind of gimmick that they do because I mean, again, one of my major positives with this is the action scenes. And with episode 3, like that pretty cool fight scene that we get in the skating rink. um the audio just drops out arbitrarily and everything sounds really muffled. Like, they want you to feel like you're hearing it from Maya's perspective, but this happens out of nowhere, just kind of in the middle of the scene. Like, it's not, triggered by somebody hitting her in the back of the head, um or her turning off the music, or the music going out, or anything like that. It just kind of happens. And then arbitrarily it just goes back to us being able to hear everything. um
And not only that, you can hear some things. You can hear bits of it. It's not like you can't hear anything. You can hear some things, just not
yeah,
other
it's
things.
just muffled, like it's almost underwater.
Okay, so we're getting there. So let me just cover this real quick because I'm not going to pretend how much about hearing impaired or deaf or even mute, or like Charlie Cox's character Daredevil, where it's being blind. I don't know how much you guys know about those impairments, but this show is like, Malik, you sent me a video of the lead being interviewed by Jimmy Fallon, and the discussion of how this is supposed to be an empowering character, but it's also supposed to be like, kids are going to grow up and look up to these people and yada yada yada. Which, first of all, when every episode, and I just pulled it up, every episode literally starts with the following contains mature content. Viewer discretion is advised. first of all, whose kids are watching these episodes? But that's okay. Whatever. Besides that, we also have to understand it's normal that hearing impaired or deaf or what have you, they're a minority, and naturalistically through that, most people don't know anything about it. And the problem you have when it comes to various forms of representation is this is people's first introduction to, and the show is trying to hit many points with this. An introduction to Native Americans, which it does poorly. Introduction to someone who is disabled physically, which is it's there, but it's goofy. But also to this point, people's first foray and introduction to a character who is deaf and dealing with that and growing up with, and they want to hit home at growing up with it because they keep going back to her being a child. But it's this thing where, okay, but is Maya deaf or is she hearing impaired? Because if you're deaf, you can't hear anything. If she's hearing impaired, then the question becomes, how severe is the impairment? Can she hear some things? How high do they have to be? Or is she borderline deaf to where it does sound like everything's under the typical you can't hear? You have ringing ears because of the explosion 5 feet away from you. So it's like everything sounds like it's muffled and it's underwater. But that's not being deaf, that's being hearing impaired. How far along are you? What's the severity of the hearing impairment? But it's been very blatantly clear, even in this poor man's excuse of a comic book character's adaptation, because there are severe differences, which doesn't benefit the show. It actually hurts it a lot because I'm reading it right now, and the comics it's a lot better, but we'll get to that. What you're doing is you're trying to educate an ignorant audience about a deaf community, this community that has struggled forever. ASL didn't exist for most of them for most of their existence because they're a shunned community. You either learn to read lips or you get the fuck out. Some of them were being euthanized back in the day. Like it's this whole thing, and you're so Marvel's taking up the reins through whatever, but at as a if you're trying to be in a position to have give a voice to the voiceless, essentially, whether it be about not having enough representation or actually educating people in the right way, and uh, help misinformation and get away from that and try to actually educate people about the real problems. They did a very bad job, even on the most basic fundamental level of, oh, because like people are going to watch it and say, oh, deaf people can still hear things. Just minimally. It's like, no, that's not what deaf is about. How did you screw the pooch on that one? All you had to do is literally Google what it's like to be deaf. Listen to interviews. For fuck's sake, watch Switched at Birth. I haven't even seen it, but I know about the show. I know about the lead actresses in there and what they've had to do. And that's a really good source material to go from. And if no one knows what the show is, and they watch Echo and think, oh, I'm going to learn about disabled people, and I'm going to learn about Native American culture, and I'm going to learn about what it's like to be have one leg that functions properly instead of having a prosthetic. You're not going to come out of this more educated. If anything, best case scenario, and this is the best case scenario, you're going to come out of it thinking you know more and knowing a lot less and being misinformed. Worst case scenario, you come out of it just as ignorant as you came into it.
Yeah, that's the other thing that I've been telling people, who have asked me about this show since they know that I've seen it. For all of the pretentious, leftist kind of talking points that they were hitting in interviews, like we're so committed to representation, and like it's representation is so important and all this. I don't I don't take away from this show. Like I don't know anything more about Native American culture or even this specific tribe. I don't really know anything more than I did when I started this show. Like so much of it is, and like this is the issue with like being obsessed with quote unquote representation as some sense of like false virtue. this is what the fuck this is. Like it's for Native American people, made by Native American people, but also we're educating people about Native American people. It's like, no, you're not. Like, sure, like the costumes are authentic and whatever, but that's it. Like this shit is very, very surface level, um, and navel gazing. It doesn't even get into the nitty gritty all
It
that
really
much.
does feel like as long as we have the exposure, that's good enough. And
Yeah,
that's the laziest, not that's below the bare minimum when it comes to, do you really want representation or do you just want your name out there?
And yeah, I think you guys have touched on everything I was gonna say. I think the representation in this show is not good. If that's what it's trying to be, which we all know it is, and it's not. I don't know anything about this Native American tribe, which is the thing they really hyper focus on. Every episode leads with a piece of Native American culture from an ancestor or whatever, and I don't know anything more. I have no clue what you were trying to communicate to me. And I know this show is made with the Choctaw Nation. So like they had the people who like should be able to explain this the best with them, and they still failed. I have no clue. It feels like it was made for people who already understand the ins and outs of this culture. Um and furthermore, I just want to say I think, you know, I don't like the whole we're going to go after representation. We're going to, make representation the forefront of a character. And that's not what this character is. And that's not what this character, really was. Sure, her superpowers have to do with her deafness, just like Matt Murdock's have to do with the fact that he's blind. But I mean, what I care more about is like her as a person, which they utterly fail at. I've been watching Daredevil, and just after I saw this show, I was like, I want to see something good again. And I've watched the first 4 episodes of Daredevil season 1, and what they do so well is making Matt Murdock into like a flawed person. Matt Murdock is not good. His lifestyle is not good. He is not a bad person, but he's not handling his life well. And really, none of the characters on Daredevil, besides like maybe Foggy and Claire, are. Um, and so we have flawed heroes, and this is something the MCU never wants to tap into: is flawed heroes. Jessica Jones is not, sorry for that noise, is not a good person. She's not a bad person either, but she has flawed morality. And Echo is sold to us as this criminal, as this anti-hero, as someone who's not a good person, who wants to take over a criminal enterprise. I mean, for all intents and purposes, she should be a villain. But instead, the show ends with her at a picnic with her family, the same way that She-Hulk Attorney at Law ends, which I don't like that show. But at least it fits the tone. And so it's this weird, like, aversion to showing characters that are flawed, and that like having a protagonist that's a bad person. I don't understand why they can't touch on that.
yeah. You know
Because
what's
from the
funny
very
about
beginning, we're told
that?
she's a Mary
Hold on.
Sue.
Okay, so hold on a second, David. Yeah, Cave. The thing with that is this show, when it was being talked about by the the director, and like we really wanted to push things. We really wanted to zero in the fact that this is a villain. And I watched the show that you actually made, and I'm like, you are so full of shit. Like you don't even show her killing one innocent person. Every single person that dies at her hands that we actually see is someone that is actively trying to kill her or her family. Every single person. Um, like the one aside from like the guy who gets his neck broken, which is funny because no one can get their neck broken like that, and especially not someone who has the strength of a female. But ignoring the like the real world implications of how you were to actually break somebody's neck, uh, she doesn't really do all that much killing under Kingpin's thumb that we get to actually see and live with. It's played lip service to, but conveniently there can be this kind of dissociation from that because they're not willing to put that in the audience face, and really live in it like they do with somebody like Punisher. Um, because we
This
want to paint her as this like superhero at the end of it, who is channeling the power of her ancestors.
No, exactly. And everything about the show is, first and foremost, just to get it out of the way, there is absolutely zero character development for Maya, because everything we've gotten from the very first episode to the very last episode is is about ham-fisting us this narrative of she's a villain and she does bad things and it's a redemption kind of story and this, that, and the other. Like similar, and I love that you mentioned Daredevil as a, because it's yeah, it's intertwined. Within the Marvel Studios comics, it's obvious, but within Marvel Studio, the MCU, they're intertwined even loosely at this point. But it's, and I love that you made that comparison, Cave, because it's this thing where here is a show where you have writers who know how to write a character and still have the audience root for him. And Maya is a character who is written that you should root for her because we told you so, and she's endearing because we told you so, and you should look up to her because we told you so. And she's flawed and a villain in name only because we keep telling you that she is. And she's a badass, and she's this that because we keep telling you she is, but every opportunity we get to show you, we refuse or just don't, or we just drop the ball. Um and so from the very, very beginning, it was very clear, at least to me, it was very clear that she was both, but it's also marketing. She's a Mary Sue character, unsurprisingly. Unlike, and I'm just going to paraphrase to what I actually have here. Unlike other MCU characters, especially in Phase One, Maya is already considered to be, and we hear it from Kingpin from the very first episode. Maya is already considered great from the first 20 minutes of the episode, which we're just supposed to believe as opposed to being shown. And like, just show us how she becomes this great character. Like, Tony Stark wasn't a great character in Iron Man 1. He had social status, he had money. He was just another billionaire. And then there was the accident, and then there was in wherever they were, and then the rings got 10 rings got involved, and then he made the suit, and he became great. He became greater than he was, and it was a redemption story at the end of the day. That's what it really was, a redemption story. Um, Maya doesn't have any of that. You look at Captain America. He was less than great. He was this scrawny kid getting beat the crap beaten out of him. But those are lead, like, really lead characters, A-list like characters from the comics. I'll do you one better. If we look at, but again, it's about building the character up to show us how they are great or how they became great. Even characters like Black Widow and Hawkeye, and remember how they were introduced in the MCU, who were closer to supporting cast if you really think about it. Because yes, they're in the ensemble, but even in the Avengers film and Black Widow and Iron Man 2, they're supporting cast. They're leads, but they're supporting cast. They're supporting the other Avengers, like Iron Man, like Captain America, like Thor. Um, so if you really think about it from that perspective, Black Widow and Hawkeye are just there to support the others. The audiences didn't really need to be told that Hawkeye and Black Widow were great in those films. We saw that eventually, especially with Hawkeye, because that was the joke in Avengers. He got the short end of the stick. He got 2 lines, and that was it. But we saw that redemption of Hawkeye, where he have got removed control and mind control from Loki's scepter, and he helped the Avengers during the Chitauri attack. And we saw Hawkeye had a place amongst the rest of them, even though he didn't get enough screen time. Apparently, they didn't give they gave Jeremy Renner the short end of the stick, but nonetheless, and they did the same thing with Black Widow in the Avengers. We saw that they eventually became great over the course with Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2, Black Widow was introduced. She was just this fan service character who was hot, and they played to, that was the point. They played to, oh, he's scrolling through his iPad and kind of thing. It was like, oh, she's a model. It was very funny. And at the very end of Iron Man 2, she's literally a secret agent who's kicking the crap out of these literally rolling and flipping all over this one dude, helping Iron Man. With James Rhodes, hacking and all that stuff in James Rhodes' suit. And in the Avengers, both saw her and Hawkeye, even though yeah, he got hit the short end of the stick. They're still good examples of non-lead characters from the get-go who didn't need to be told were great. They were built up, and we were shown their greatness. Even Captain I'll even give you this. Even Captain Marvel was built up over the course of her film, despite the fourth wave feminist narrative and the not great marketing, and there were Mary Sue elements. But Carol Danvers, in her own film, did not start out as a Mary Sue, despite what the marketing led you to believe. We actually saw her rebel against the Kree and then obtain or figure out her powers and then overcome that. We saw a increase in character development, and despite our feelings about the film, I will go back and watch Captain Marvel than to come watch Echo, because Echo didn't learn anything. She didn't gain anything. And anything she did actually gain is, oh, she has arbitrary ancestral Native American powers for arbitrary
Yeah,
nondescript
they're more or
reasons,
less handed to her.
because characters are
Don't
not
worry.
allowed to have or can't be great without having some kind of superpowers. We're seeing the same thing with Sony and Craven. Like, Craven's not interesting in his own right. We're not gonna read The Wild Hunt because that's a boring comic book story. So he's just boring. So what we're going to do is give him Dr. Doolittle powers, because that'll draw in the audiences. But this is the problem. It's they don't respect. They're doing what Warner Brothers has been doing for since 2013. They don't respect their own IP. They're going backwards. And it's ridiculous.
And I will say, I think, you can either have your character's superpowers be a handicap on them, or give them, a responsibility that they don't want, or you can have them be something that your character works to earn. So you have like Iron Man and Daredevil dichotomy. I'll just go with, or
Exactly.
Spider-Man. You can have Iron Man who works to make his technology better and better, and on his way becomes a better person, or you can have Daredevil or Spider-Man whose powers are kind of a handicap on them. Daredevil in a much more significant way because he's blind, but also Spider-Man. He's he has this responsibility now that he has to fulfill. We never see, and also Echo's meant to be a villain, but we'll assume she's meant to be a hero.
Yeah.
She,
Okay. Sure.
we never see her like gain this responsibility and this, reverence for her power set. She's just has them now, and it's so weird. There's no development for her. She she doesn't start anywhere to earn these powers. She's just kind of given them because her ancestors, and that's the example that's all you get really. And it's also weird that they're calling her a villain when even directly next to Kingpin on this show, Kingpin is so much more violent and evil and villainous than she is. But we're meant to believe that she can hold her own against him. And maybe that she can't, but that she's going to build to that. We're going to get to the point where she can. And she has no villainous attributes at all. And no
No,
heroic attributes at all. She is nothing. She is
she
just
she is a nothing burger of a character, Cave. You're absolutely right. And the one of the weirdest moments for me in this show um, was like Kingpin handing her the thing that she claims that she wants on a silver platter, and she can't jump at it because reasons. Like she wants to be like, it's time for a queen. I'm going to take over Kingpin's empire. Okay, you can have it. Just come back to New York with me. That's that's it.
To me,
Now,
it sounded like the same thing that happens when again, going back to this fourth wave feminist narrative where you want equal opportunity. Okay, here's the job. Oh, oh, well, thanks, but I want to fight for the job. Well, you guys did, so I'm giving you the job. No, I want to literally fight for the job. It's like, what do you want? We're giving you what you're asking for, and you're still not happy. So is this what you really want, or you just want an excuse to fight for something?
so this is the other weird thing about that, though, David. This show is weirdly um, not willing to engage all that much with the fact that Kingpin had her father executed. Like
Yeah.
that's not talked about anywhere near enough. And it's one of the things that makes like this awkward tension between them so weird, almost as if she has forgotten that Kingpin had her father executed, and it was the whole reason that she shot him in the face in the first place. Like, why is that not being talked about?
Yeah, episode 5 is the last time we actually get reference to it, and it's nothing more than a sad excuse for Kingpin to goat her. That's it. Just to get her a little bit amped up. That's all it serves. And I don't know if it's the reasoning behind it is because well, we already talked about this enough in Hawkeye, so we don't need to reiterate it, even though this is a story about her. It was like, okay, it's very, very bizarre. I think it's very obvious that the relationship between her and Kingpin is extremely flawed and not in the well written way. But that's not, believe it or not, that is not the worst relationship I've seen in the show. I will make the case that there is a even weirder and even more abysmal relationship between Maya and a separate character, but we'll get there. Anything else you guys want to talk
I
about?
want to address, well, before
Okay.
you go on to the next point,
Yeah.
To piggyback off of that, I want to address her sister because I hate that
She doesn't have a
so
sister.
much.
You mean the female cousin?
Oh, the cousin.
Bonnie. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I was referring to. Okay, let's jump into it. Cave, you ready to talk about Bonnie?
I have an issue with that.
Okay, you go first because I want to hear what you guys have to say about that, about Bonnie.
I feel really bad for that actress. Like, great that she got a paycheck, but outside of that, like, the fuck, like this is a waste of any legitimately good actress's time. Um, like to just come in and be this like nothing burger of a supporting character who was like, Maya, you don't speak to me. Maya, you don't speak to me, and I love you, but clearly that love is one sided because you're so walled off and emotionally unavailable, and that's my character. Um,
Every single supporting character on this show is nothing, either does nothing for the show or brings the show down. And I have my Daredevil example here. Ben Urich is introduced episode 3 of Daredevil season 1. And immediately you understand the moral dilemma this man has of like, I need to keep my job. I need to keep selling papers. But I can't because I have to sell papers. You know, I want to do regular journalism and do good journalism, but I can't because that's not the industry anymore. And there's no supporting character that is nearly as compelling as Ben Urich, who's like the 5th most important character of season 1 on Echo.
And I don't want to say, I've never been to Oklahoma. I don't want to say this is a reflection of the people who live in Oklahoma. Maybe they've just got nothing to do, so there's nothing going on for them. But as we'll talk later on about Native American culture and that aspect of representation they tried to have in the show and they really didn't. I've been in Arizona and I've worked for Native American companies and organizations, and I've worked directly with Native Americans, and I still have Native American friends. And there's a lot of everything's missing from that. So even I have experience in that realm, but I've been to Arizona and I like that. I've never been to Oklahoma. Is Marvel just trying to say people in Oklahoma are just boring and just exist and don't do anything? Or is it another things are there? They do happen. They have farmland, they have community and culture, and you just don't care or you don't know how to write it into the show. Because everything we've gotten, and going back, because again, we'll talk about the culture later, going back to the relationships, everything about the show is about relationships and connection and community. But we're ham-fisted that narrative quite literally through them talking about it, but we never ever see it, ever. The only time we see a sense of community is the very last episode where they're having a fucking Sundance party. I don't know, and we don't even know why that's happening. It's just happening. Not that it needs to happen, but we need to be told why it's happening. But then again, it's you are ham-fisting us this narrative of culture and Native American community and all these other things in Oklahoma for 4 episodes straight with nothing. With just like, and it exists somewhere out in left field, but it's there. And then you kind of have it. But you also kind of don't, because that's like the one time we actually see not a vision, but we actually see something tribal some form of representation. But again, now the audience, as an ignorant audience that doesn't know anything about Native Americans, but more importantly, doesn't know anything about reservations, because as far as I've seen, and I've been taking notes for all 4 episodes, not a single one of them actually mentioned reservations, because there is a distinction, and there's a very big reason, very political and historical reason why reservations still exist, and whether you were born and raised on one versus born and raised in the suburbs. And then there is a distinction there, and there is a cultural difference there, and the show doesn't even try to touch on that either, and it's abysmal. But nonetheless, getting back to about relationships, and we already talked about Bonnie, so let's talk about it. It's fucking weird. I'm not going to assume anybody and any listeners' preferences, or I'm just going to go straight into it. No filter. I don't know your thoughts and feelings about incest. To each their own, I suppose. I'm not going to get into that. But Bonnie and Maya's relationship does not look like at any point of this show at all, other than the very first episode where you see them as kids. Oh, they're cousins. That makes sense. Every single scene and mention of their names after the fact look like they're they broke up, that they're exes. They do not play, they do not talk, and they do not and they finally get their interaction in episode 3, and they do not look at each other. And Bonnie, the actress for Bonnie, is clearly a much better actress, but the way she looks at Maya is not like, I don't know what the director told her, but you don't look at that person, you're my long lost cousin I haven't seen in 20 years. No, you look like a long lost ex, like, oh, we had a very intimate relationship and we had a falling out, and I haven't seen you in 20 years, but it still hurts.
Yeah, as someone, I actually, I can speak to this. I had like 3 cousins that I had to, there's a falling out between my mom and their mom, and I couldn't talk to them for probably about 8 years, like no relationship, and they were my best friends. So I don't think that that was particularly like something that I would call weird. That just seems like something normal, The relationship is very awkward. I didn't think it was. I mean, maybe the way she was acting was a little strange, but the way it was written, I didn't think that was a problem. The problem is that character is so, like Gary said, has nothing to contribute. It's just like, you abandoned me, and there's no or barely any resolution to that. And I feel that way about every character. We have the same thing with Maya's grandmother. You abandoned me, and there's one conversation that they have about it, and it feels so fake and unearned. They don't build to it at all, and then you have one conversation about it, and then
really unearned, especially because they less of that scene. That scene is less about them actually reconciling and more about her grandmother expositing vapid nonsense about their heritage.
And she really didn't even do that either.
Yeah, it's such a nothing burger of a scene that's trying to manufacture emotion, and Maya is crying, and I don't know why. I really don't know why.
Yeah, but before we talk about the grandmother, any final thoughts on Bonnie, Malik?
No, because as Cave said, there's nothing to have final thoughts on. Because this is
with the last thing I want to mention, and to really hit home at the how bizarre, and Cave and I probably disagree on this, but how bizarre I found their dynamic and their relationship is literally, quote from episode 3: you can't even look at me in the eye. I waited for you every night for years. End quote. For your cousin? For 20 years? It's so like, and to Maya's, at least their dialogue part, to give them a little bit of credit there, she does make a rational response, which is you move on. People move on. People think, they change. I forget exactly what you said, but it's because it's people grow apart. Exactly. And it's this thing where this is not cousin.
The lines that are chosen there, David, do read more like a romantic relationship that fell apart as opposed to a familial one.
Thank you. It
Um,
feels like the writers have more experience and comfortability writing relationship dynamics than familial ones. So they and it's like, well, Maya doesn't have a love interest and she needs one because of course she kind of does or does. I don't know. It felt like they were fighting each other on whether or not she does or doesn't have need a love interest. And then Bonnie just kind of became both the cousin and the love interest at the same time.
that's
And
the other weird thing
yeah.
about Maya as a main character in this show. She doesn't want anything. Like she said she wanted to take over
She doesn't
Kingpin's
want
criminal
anything. Yeah.
empire. She clearly doesn't. She doesn't want to actually um, reach out and reconcile with her family and reconnect with them. She doesn't actually want to do that. Like most of the characters in this show, if they do much of anything, they spend their time either whining about Maya or trying to get Maya to open up, and that's it. And it's Maya constantly like, yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah, no, I'm good. Fuck off. Until arbitrarily because my grandmother decided to tell me some stuff about my heritage, and then the ghost of my mom decided to tell me more stuff about my heritage, and I'm crying, and everything is all right in the world now, and I'm going to show up at this family barbecue, and things are going to be better going forward. It's like, where did this? There's been no actual real growth with any of these characters, um, like all, at all.
It's literally you can really just summarize this entire show of a Mary Sue walks into town, things happen, the end.
And I just want to hammer home the fact that, like Gary said, it feels like not just that Echo has no motivation. There is only one character on this show that has any sort of motivation besides a one-dimensional, oh, you did this to me, or oh, I did this to you, and that's Kingpin. Kingpin is the only character that has any motivation, and it's to get Echo back to New York and to get Echo back on his side and to manipulate her into being back on his side. And that is not paid. If you were just going to make a 5-episode show about Echo and Kingpin's relationship and how that evolves post Hawkeye, I think you could do it, and I think you could do it decent. But instead, they bring in Biscuits and her grandma, and I assume that's her grandpa and her cousin, and I don't care. I never cared. These characters were not like she lived in New York for years. Never mentioned these characters once, and now I'm expected to believe that like in a week, these characters all of a sudden they have a newfound, relationship, and then she goes on a picnic with all of them, whatever. Another thing I like about Daredevil and the Netflix shows is that every show except for the Defenders that I've seen feels like it takes place over weeks, there's days that pass by in between episodes because you're hitting the major events. That's what a TV show is meant to be. It's not just a movie, but in episodes. It's a TV show where you're in a universe and you're experiencing the most important events in a plot line in a universe. And so Echo doesn't do that at all, which makes sense. It's 5 episodes, whatever. You shouldn't have made a 5-episode series, but beyond that, it she comes into town, things happen, and then over the course of like 3 days, she reconciles with her entire family. And also, like, I don't Kingpin stuff happens. It's so weird. There's not enough time given to any one thing, and so everything feels rushed to the point where there are probably a total of 3 scenes that Maya has with her grandmother and 3 scenes that Maya has with her cousin. And then the rest is time spent with Biscuits or Kingpin. And let me reiterate the fact that Biscuits is the dumbest character. He is dumber than fucking Patrick from SpongeBob. Okay? I'm sorry. I hate this character. This is an MA show. This is an MA show. This show is for mature audiences. And the only time they use it, and the only reason they use it, is to fucking squirt more blood packs on the people who they get shot. They shot. And we have characters like Biscuits in an MA grounded show. And it's all going to be street level, and it takes place in Oklahoma. Don't watch the show.
I wasn't really paying attention. So when I first saw the episode and then I got into episode 2, I'm like, what the hell is this Marvel Spotlight crap? So I had to Google it, and it was about focusing on more street level characters, and I thought that was a stupid decision because you've already been doing that with Hawkeye. You've already been doing that with Black Widow to a degree. Not her movie was more larger scale, but nonetheless, technically, Spider-Man has always been a street level character. And even though he's in the MCU and he went to space and he was in Endgame and yada yada yada, he's still a street level character for all intents and purposes. So to both make the differentiation and categorize them out is I think is stupid, and it hurts your brand. It hurts
I
the
wouldn't go as
point
far
of
as
an
saying it hurts the
interconnected
brand,
universe.
but
Well, yeah, no,
so
fair. It doesn't hurt the
hold on a
brand.
second. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. Um, this is essentially the MCU's version of um, Marvel Max or Marvel Knights. Like this, we've decided, okay, we're going to stop, trying to tiptoe around everything has to be PG-13 for kids. So we're just gonna say, screw it. We're gonna devote like a wing under Marvel where things are gonna be rated TVMA, things are gonna be rated R. I don't necessarily have an issue with that. Because Marvel has done that before. They weren't
Me neither.
super, like they weren't super consistent with it. But they did have that initiative for a time, and it was relatively stable. So for me, that's more so what it is. Like they can say it's street level, and to your point, yeah. Like my favorite Spider-Man stories are often more street level things, but um, like he's a character that can kind of exist in both, and the more like grand scale Avenger stuff, and the more crime drama mafia stuff with Kingpin and Hammerhead and Silver Sable and those type of stories. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't include Spider-Man in that for that reason. I mean, I think it'd be cool for him to be able to show up and stuff like that, but I still think Disney is still at a point where they're too fickle to allow that. Like we would never see Holland's Spider-Man in an R-rated thing.
Not that we need to, but
We don't necessarily need to. But
yeah,
I'm just saying that's not an issue for me. Like the whole Marvel Spotlight thing.
I completely disagree. By the way, I think we 100% should. I think need too strong, but I think we 100% should see him in an MA thing. I would love an episode of Daredevil Born Again where he shows up.
The reason I bring this up is because they're with the Marvel Spotlight and focusing on street level characters as a way to differentiate it from all the other characters is we already had, at least in my opinion, we already had a really good, not amazing, but we already had a really good show about a street level character that both didn't have the Marvel Spotlight banner, and that could just be because they didn't think of it at the time.
Well,
but
David,
unlike Echo, feels like it takes place in the MCU.
Well, the reason why this street level thing with Hawkeye thing kind of falls apart is like he's been a part of the Avengers for a very long time anyway. So even though he's just a human being, the vast majority of what we see him doing is not street level shit. Like he's helping fight aliens and robot armies and shit like that. Like that's not street level. Most of what we've actually seen him do in practice is not street level shit. Even though he's just a human.
Well, my point is with the Hawkeye show, you're taking a character similar to Spider-Man, where he's been part of the Avengers ensemble and has done all these things. The Hawkeye show brings him back to his roots, essentially, where is street level, because he's not. The Hawkeye show has nothing to do with aliens. He doesn't go anywhere near it, but because I am a semi-retired kind of whatever Avenger, I also do have access to PIM particles, and here we're going to do this on the bridge, and I'm teaching my protege this. But even from the very beginning, like episode 1, what do we see? We see how did a young Kate Bishop and her mom deal with the aftermath of the Chitauri invasion from the first Avengers, and that leads into her mom getting involved with Kingpin, another street level villain, another street level character. So Hawkeye, even though he's been in other things, you can still go to Hawkeye, watch it on its own merits, and say he's a street level character because that's what he is. He's just been a part of the ensemble in the greater MCU landscape. But he is a street level character, and Spider-Man, I do agree to your point. He can flip a walk between two worlds, but at the end of the day, you're not going to have Spider-Man fight Thanos and think he's going to win, and we kind of already saw that in Endgame, Infinity War. But it's even in the comics, it's Spider-Man is tried and true in the way he was written. He's a street level character with street level problems, day to day issues. But because of his notoriety, because he's the face of Marvel, we'll throw him in everything. And sometimes it lands and sometimes it doesn't. That's the nature of comics. And I think it would be a great thing, a great, amazing, obviously if they do it right, to have Tom Holland Spider-Man just like in Homecoming, just doing a kid's shit and going back to school and off the tail end of No Way Home, going to college and dealing with street level shit and getting to work on time and paying rent, because that's Spider-Man, always down on his luck, but on a street level basis. And the problem with Echo is, we're focusing on street level characters, and it feels so removed from the MCU. Hawkeye didn't, and that's where you introduced Echo. It felt like it's small, it's contained, it doesn't really affect the large scheme, the large landscape of anything, but it's a simple superhero show that just happens in New York City, and things happen and they don't affect what's happening to Star-Lord and the Guardians in space, and it doesn't affect Avengers and Avengers Tower, even though it's the same city, but it's street level shit, and you get that in Hawkeye. And Echo is, we're supposed to be street level, and we're supposed to take place in the MCU. It doesn't look like it doesn't feel like it, and she leaves New York City by motorcycle at that. That's my problem with Marvel Spotlight, at least in concept, and what we've seen in Echo in practice, which is you're deliberately creating this division where the whole point of the MCU is interconnected stories, and Echo neither feels interconnected and it doesn't read as interconnected, and having the Marvel Spotlight banner as street level, it shouldn't matter. Just tell a story and it's interconnected anyway. Just let it be street level. Don't market it as street level. It'll just be what it is.
I wholeheartedly disagree. I for the longest time wanted the MCU to tell stories more like the comics. Granted, I haven't liked anything Marvel has put out probably since Loki season 2. I thought it was good, but before then, probably since Endgame. So I'm not rooting for anything. But
wait, you didn't like Shang-Chi?
Shang-Chi was good, but it's like stuff that I actually really really want to watch again. I guess Shang-Chi might be an exception to that, but for the most part, if that's the only one, still I'm not very excited. So I'll give Shang-Chi. What I was gonna say is, I've been wanting the MCU to tell stories more like comic books, which is you have your team ups, but for the most part, these are independent stories. And you can have the Avengers come together, but I want to see a lone Captain America story and a lone Iron Man story, and that's kind of what they did for a while. And that was good. But I want these kind of sects of the MCU. I would love my street level sect of the MCU and my cosmic sect and my multiverse sect. And that way we can tell these stories without kind of watering down Miss Marvel because Doctor Strange 2 just happened, where we go to another universe, and I didn't like that movie, but where you go to another universe and, find a council that's like handling multiversal affairs. And then, a month later you release Miss Marvel, which is a story about a teenage girl. It's just, regardless, point being, I like having sects of the MCU. And I thought if you do a street level sect of the MCU, that'd be great. The problem was Echo was not street level. It was not grounded. Like, it is literally the definition of not grounded. The Guardians of the Galaxy have more rules set in place than Echo does. And it was not, in Hawkeye, I'd like to push back on the idea that, like, Hawkeye was a good show. Hawkeye was okay. It was like 6 out of 10 maybe. But it suffers from every other issue that every other Disney Plus show has. It can be incredibly goofy in weird ways where, like, in the same part, while Yelena's pursuing the person that she thinks murdered her sister, or her surrogate sister, whatever, she's cracking jokes with Kate Bishop. And why are you doing that? Like, this should be a very serious, sacred mission for you. So the idea that it's like some sort of paragon of mature stories or grounded stories is kind of weird to me. But And sorry, that might be a
Yeah, I can see
misrepresentation.
that.
But you get what I'm saying. I don't like Hawkeye. I thought it was
Yeah,
middling at best.
I thought Hawkeye was entertaining, but nonetheless, that's just trying to. That's kind of the weird quagmire I'm in when it comes to Marvel Spotlight. But also, it's the first time I'm seeing it. It's the first time I'm hearing about it, and Echo's the first show leading the charge. And maybe, to be fair, maybe it's just leaving a bad taste in my mouth. But as all things, time will tell. Um, Anything else you guys want to discuss, or I can just go straight back to my notes?
Yeah. How many more notes do you have, David?
Dude, I haven't even gone through any of them. I talked about 2 things. I'll
Okay.
I'll
I
I'll
really,
power through them. Just interrupt me.
yeah. I need you to rapid fire
Yeah.
this because I don't want this to go any longer than
No, of
another
course.
30
The
minutes.
mother,
But
the very first episode, the mother's
well,
death.
hold on, David. But
Okay.
before you do that, I do just want to
Right.
mention something going on with Daredevil Born Again in lieu
Okay.
of the whole Marvel Spotlight thing. So this is still rumor territory. This hasn't been echoed by. I keep doing it again. Hasn't been echoed by any reputable sources, as far as I can tell. But apparently, the actors who played Foggy and Karen in the Netflix series are coming back for Daredevil Born Again now. Again, right now that's just rumor territory. Um, I hope that is confirmed by an actual reputable source, because a reputable source did just announce, I think this was Hollywood Reporter, that the stunt coordinator for the original Netflix show is coming back for Born Again. So that's exciting. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that in lieu
Yeah,
of Born Again, because regardless of how we feel about this show, I think that them doing a creative overhaul and scrapping what they had already shot was smart, especially if they got to the dailies and just realized that it was not working, and they're actually treating it more like a proper season 4 to the original show, which is what it should have been in the first place. But they didn't want to pay the actors what they were worth, which is insulting. Like, you're gonna bring back Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio. Pay them what the fuck they're worth. Um,
That's what all the strikes were about.
yeah.
yeah,
I was
but
gonna
then
say another thing I was really excited about. Obviously, Foggy and Karen are necessary. They are the heart and soul of the show. But another thing that's very important is that the Punisher, one of the Punisher writers, is coming on as the showrunner. Which I don't know how you guys felt about Punisher. I haven't seen but like the first 2 episodes. But obviously, I don't know if it's Daredevil quality level, but it's definitely close. So that's good news as well. I think Born Again, I am not getting excited for it because I got excited for Echo, and we know how that turned out. But I am cautiously optimistic, I'll say.
I
if they
really did enjoy
ruin
Punisher.
Daredevil Born Again, I will blow my brains out. Like, you cannot ruin my second favorite Marvel character of all time when you have the actors from his previous show who were incredible straight off the freaking page. You cannot fuck that up. Like that will destroy me. I need that show to be
You want to
good.
bet?
Uh, but
They'll
anyway,
find a
go ahead.
way. They'll find a way. But okay, really quickly, let's just skim through the fucking thing, because let's be fair, we really did talk about most of the talking points. I think there are a few things that are major that we haven't hit yet, but let's just go
Yeah.
through the list and we'll get to it when we get to it. The mother's
Okay.
death was extremely unemotional, just something that happened. People were upset about it because they were told that they were upset about it. That was a little bit annoying. Finding out that the way Maya lost her leg was in the car accident, and we actually see the glass in her leg. That's not how tempered glass works. That's not how glass in cars work. They're literally designed to shatter so they don't injure you. So either the writers or the prop guys, like, no one told them or no one communicated, like, that's not how glass works. So that was stupid. She was it's again, I was very confused during episode 1 when these things took place, but as you go through the entire show and look back on it, it's very, very blatantly clear that Maya, even as a child, has kind of always been involved in Kingpin's gang. Like, she's always known. like in the very first episode, she's at the karate class and she's talking to her dad like she wants to do what he does, and he tells her, no, I want something better for you. And you see that Kingpin like touches her cheek. She's already been in that crime, a gangster world from the very beginning. And so when she's older and we see that, leading up to the Daredevil showing up, which is very, very fan servicey, but showing up that to that scene, and she's hesitating. She knows she's there to kill people, and she's just hesitating. She looks like, from what I read in one of the reviews, she looks like she doesn't even want to be there. She wants to be anywhere but where the camera is. And you have the other two guys fighting it out with all these other guys, and she's just kind of standing there and she doesn't want to be there. It's like, what are you doing? You know what you were doing. You know why you're here. Why is there hesitation?
You know
What's
what's
going
really
on?
goofy about that scene, David?
Yeah.
It was really goofy about that scene, having probably watching more interviews with the director of most of these episodes than anyone else on the internet.
Mhm.
The mentality behind having that shot as a oneer was having Maya start off as an innocent teenager and coming out the other side a
What?
cold-blooded killer.
You're kidding, right? You have to. You have to be
I,
kidding.
I wish I was. I
Oh
will
my
send you the
God.
video when we're done with this.
Okay, that's embarrassing. That's incredibly
Yeah.
embarrassing. It's very pretentious. But okay, because obviously
most-
that's not. She didn't look like a
Yeah.
teen. Never mind. Never mind.
The most pretentious navel gazing thing that doesn't even come across when you actually watch that scene.
Yeah.
Because she kills like one person.
Yeah, and she barely accomplishes it, and then she's just like, "Oh, I have a thirst for blood now. You fight me, and you fight me." It's so bizarre. But sticking with the fight scene, I'm done with it. But sticking with the fight scene, the security guard that sexually harasses her and touches her ass at the very beginning, he's guarding the one door to get into the back rooms to interrupt this meeting. Mid fight, he shows up from the opposite side from this closet off that leads offset. And so he comes in, and then she's like, "Oh, I want to fight you." Where the fuck does this guy come from? Why did he come from the opposite direction? From a choreographical standpoint, it would have been a perfect idea to have him come and sneak up behind the three of them and have them confront that. And instead, he just shows up. He's like, "Oh, what's going on here?" It's like, how did you get here? You were guarding the literal entrance. It's so clunky. It's so dumb. But that's that. The fight scene ends and she barely comes out of it alive. And and we also see that she's dealing with weaponry. She's firing several types of different guns, or trying to handle them, while Daredevil is disarming her immediately, as he damn well should. And then we get this very clunky montage that's supposed to then I'm like, okay, this takes place before Hawkeye. Where you're seeing her actually getting trained to use firearms and all these things. Like, but she already kind of knows how to do that. Clear. But anyways, I already talked about the first 25 minutes, pre-dead Hawkeye, and it was very confusing, but now I'm like getting a sense for what the hell is actually going on. It's very, very weird. She's clearly and then we pick up with, like, she's at the dealership and she's trying to steal a motorcycle. She's clearly not a novice, but obviously not a pro either. So it's like, okay, so where is she in her development? It's again, it's just there, just something that's happening. She falls asleep on the motorcycle without losing her balance. And then, first of all, what is the truck in front of her honking at? Secondly, she's deaf. She can't hear it. And clearly the lights aren't waking her up, because if that was the case, the light from her motorcycle would have also woken her up. I guess we just forgot she was deaf for a second. Also, I did the math. From New York City to Oklahoma is roughly a 23-hour drive by car. And she's doing it bleeding. It's fair. We don't need to know how she got the wound. We just know she's wounded. Fine. It was a skirmish somewhere else with what have you. Was this from New York City or not? Was this not like, it's how within 4 hours you would have died of just bleeding out. And that wasn't just a cut. That was a big you saw it. They showed you multiple times. They wanted you to know how
It's a
bad it
pretty
was.
deep gash, and she drove
Yeah,
all the way to Oklahoma to have
on
it
bike, on a
on
motorcycle.
a
23-hour drive. That's how bad. That's how
Also,
far that is.
they show her starting it at day and ending it at night, which is not how time works.
No, it's stupid. Actually, Oklahoma would be approximately 2 hour, maybe about an hour back. So she would have saved herself an hour. But it's still stupid. It's ridiculous. And again, she's bleeding. She's literally bleeding out. I guess she stops at a pit stop. She just bandages. She doesn't even bandage herself. She's just like, I'm not gonna take this shirt off. I'm just gonna go roll the thing above the shirt, and then she's gonna walk out and back to their motorcycle as if she was in no pain whatsoever. Like, are you posing for the camera? Do you not need people to know you're in pain? What's going on here? But okay, so she traveled, and it's 23 hours by car. It's 6 days by bike. So maybe motorcycle is 24 a day and a half. I don't know.
Are you serious about the trunk honking and that wakes her up?
That literally happened. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
They forgot she was deaf in the first 35 minutes of the episode, of the very first episode. I'm not even joking. It's in my notes. Go back and watch the episode. That's why I have it. For everyone listening, go back and step by step, we'll go through it.
Is this episode 1?
This is episode 1, the first 30 minutes. Yes. She didn't even make it to Oklahoma yet. Yeah, why are we treating like Maya's cousin as a long lost lesbian ex? We already talked about that. Yeah, this is frustrating. And again, about relationships and community. How do all these people know, love, and remember someone they haven't seen or spoken to in 20 fucking years? Even the blatantly obvious, the community, the town idiot, Biscuit, recognized her practically immediately. Maya, you're back. Just like, you look just like you did when you were a child. No, we saw the flashbacks. We saw it 5 minutes ago. They don't. She doesn't. She's a literal grown up. How do you recognize her? It's stupid. It's so
There's
stupid.
no reason for that.
But it's no reason. Like, do you really expect me to be grounded in reality and more street level? And you haven't seen someone in 20 years, and like they're from a child to a literal adult, and oh my god, it's you. How are you been? It's so stupid. It's so stupid. Also, this is so bizarre to me. And Cave, you've mentioned Daredevil a lot, so I would love your input on this. Because the last time I saw Daredevil, I love it, but the last time I saw Daredevil was a while ago. So refresh my, or not. Where'd he go?
I don't know.
God damn it. Do you want me to? I'll just continue. I'll ask him. Wilson Fisk's influence why is his influence extend outside of New York City, the New York metro area? There you go. Welcome back, Cave. That was but I would love your input on this, because again, you've probably have a better memory of Daredevil than I do. Why is Wilson Fisk's influence extending outside of the New York metro area? It's very bizarre, but more so, his name is on warehouses and other vehicles, basically advertising himself.
Yeah, that was literally a key point of the first 3 episodes of Daredevil. Is his name is not supposed to be said. Anyone who says his name immediately gets Wesley pissed off. And also, the whole point of why his entire motivation is that he wants to make Hell's Kitchen from New York a better place. And he's had shit in Oklahoma?
No, and it's like, if you went to New Jersey, it's right across the pond. Fine, you have a few shell companies out there in warehouses. They have the space for it. Fucking Oklahoma. You know how many states you have to skip to get to Oklahoma? What does Wilson Fisk have a weird fetish for Native Americans and hiring them? Is that what's going on here? Because that's what it looked like.
Guys, I want to point something out really quick.
Okay.
So with the whole Fisk thing, I'm not so up in arms with the fact that at this point he has his name on things, because if you think about it, this is all like post Daredevil season 3, and Kingpin's already like a pretty well known figure. His ties to crime and having like so many judges and cops and politicians in his pocket, all of that is pretty well known public information. Um, so like the cat's kind of out of the bag. Like, don't say his name is more of a Daredevil season one thing. That gets thrown away in that season when he outs himself as a public figure. Um, so
Okay. That makes a lot more
yeah,
sense.
so
You're
that's
right.
what
He runs for mayor in the 3rd season, so you're right.
Oh, really? Okay. I forgot. But that makes perfect sense because I remember Wilson Fisk being the guy who hides behind shell companies and other senators and judges, which is why it was so difficult to get to him because you can never
but
track him
to what
down.
you were
But okay.
saying earlier, David, like
Yeah.
the whole Fisk, like Maya going to Fisk's, one of his random shipping stations in um, Omaha or Iowa, wherever the fuck it is still
Oklahoma.
stupid. Oklahoma, yeah, Oklahoma. It's still stupid that Maya would even do that because she would clearly already have an in there in New York. Like, why do you need to drive away from New York to mail a bomb back to one of Fisk's warehouses that's in New York? Like, it's dumb. It's so dumb.
And even more abysmal to that point is even if that was your goal and it's about disrupting, the Fisk empire, so to speak, you thought you killed him, which that we're going to talk about that in a bit. Just touch on it, but you thought you killed him. That obviously leaves a power vacuum in not just Hell's Kitchen in the New York metro area. We saw how the Chinese were getting involved in Daredevil. We saw how,
And it's been 5 months. What have you been doing in all that time?
but
And why are you doing
she was in a
like who?
perfect position to fill that void. And
And
Yeah,
instead, I'm going to go to a completely different state and send a bomb back home. It's so stupid.
I still think it is, we can talk about the public figure part, but I still think it's incredibly weird that he's in Oklahoma and that he's in all these states when his stated goal, even in season 3, is that he wants to completely like
Yeah.
shuffle around the power dynamics of Hell's Kitchen. It Kingpin's goal was never one of like countrywide, nationwide or even worldwide dominance. It was at least from the Daredevil incarnation. It was
yeah.
always
That's the thing. He doesn't. He just has a fixation on Maya. And
Yeah.
well,
Which is
yeah.
weird.
I think David's point, one of his earlier points, it's still goofy that he even has um, anyone Native American willing to work for him. Um,
Yeah. It's like, why? What's so special about all these? Because even Hawkeye had the tracksuit guys, but Wilson Fisk is a mobster. You hire who you can, and this is not the 40s and the 50s where all the Italians are hiring only Italians because it's within the family. That's not what this is nowadays. And you're in New York City, which is a melting pot, especially now. So it's this thing where you can't be choosy about who you hire. So why are so many Native Americans just so happen to be working for him and can't get out? It's a little weird. I don't know if he has a preference or something. But it does feel like it comes out of left field. And again, the extent of his reach extends so far. But whatever. Overall, episode 1, terrible. It's very, very clunkily edited, and everything felt cobbled together. With episode 2, it opens up.
Something else I wanted to mention, David. I keep
Yeah.
going back to interviews because
Yeah.
I watched a lot of interviews for this show, both the main actress and the director. And so, yeah, another thing that the director pointed out that she thought it was cool to like brag about. So many of Kingpin's lines being improvised by Vincent D'Onofrio.
Probably because the writing was so bad.
I was just about to say that, David.
Okay, I read your mind. Sorry.
Yeah, because if your actor needs to do that, like I get allowing the space for improvisation anyway, but for that to be a thing that you're bragging about in an interview, like how well do you even understand this character? Because watching the show, Vincent clearly understands who Kingpin is and should be. I don't really even know if they do.
No, but it's also very telling because what they're doing is it's also this lack of self-awareness they saw it as such a good thing, like, oh my God, he's really elevating the scene. When in reality, what it really means is you don't know how to write this character, and I'm fixing it for you. And you're acknowledging that my fix is better than your 6 months, 12 months, 9 months of writing.
And not only that, the fact that, that's the best part of the show.
Yeah.
It's Vincent.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so Vincent D'Onofrio, not only in his acting, but also his writing, was the best part of the show.
He couldn't save it at the very last episode, but he did his best for the most of it. It was a lot of heavy lifting.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
And can we like really quickly get through the rest of this time?
Yeah.
10, 15 minutes.
No, exactly. That's episode 1. It's garbage. Episode 2 starts off with another flashback. They're in canoes. You could very great CGI, but the actors are very clearly have nothing to push up against, so it literally just sticks in the fucking wind. VFX is great, but the actors' performances suffer. People even recognize Maya from afar, even after 20 years. Like, oh, I've seen Maya. She was in the skating rink. Like, how did you see that? How did you know that? They just know she's there, and that's how the grandma finds out. It's very bizarre. Again, Maya's very clearly marketed to be endearing, but she doesn't do anything endearing. And back to Biscuits, this is the point I wanted to mention: is Biscuit. She's supposed to be in this. You're supposed to look up to this character. Supposed to be whatever, but she's very clearly pressuring her male cousin Biscuits to help her with the train shit, who is known to be the town idiot, the weak-willed, easily influenced, which the grandma mentions later on, easily influenced pushover. His literal only friend is the dog he talks to. He's probably intentionally written to be some kind of man-child because we hate men. I don't know. I'm not going to assume that, but this is the one evil thing she actually does, which is she knows he's a fucking pushover and she takes full advantage of it. They clearly don't know how to write her, yada yada yada. There's this consistent thing we see throughout, whether it's flashbacks or not, where Maya acts confident and experienced, like she knows what she's doing, and then the next 1 minute, and the next second she's fucking fumbling it and tripping over her own feet. We see this example where she's about to jump on the top of the train, and she's hooked up to the harness, and she just looks at him and smirks, and she swings down, and then she almost literally falls off the goddamn train. It just like takes her a minute to actually grab something and get a hold of herself. It's like, huh?
That's like what you do in She-Hulk, like with your villain.
Yeah, it's like, are you just? Is it like smile and wave to the camera, but the second the camera's off, it's just like, oh, holy shit! I got it. The skin of my teeth. It's very, very weird. The entire train scene and all the things that were happening for her to get to where she needed. The train scene was entirely stupid. All of it was bad, especially the ending. The ending of the train scene was abysmal because you have this character who is, oh, okay, where's this guy to pick me up? Woman, jump off the fucking train. Just jump off the train. Everyone does it. We've seen it in movies for years. Just just duck and roll. That's all you have to do. And she doesn't. She waits for Biscuits to drive close enough to the train to then jump from the train, a moving vehicle, to the car, another moving vehicle, right before getting to way too close for comfort to the tunnel. Just jump off the fucking train. You didn't have to do all that. You're doing so much extra work. It was so stupid.
Well, David, I mean,
yes.
You jump off of a train, especially when going that fast. You don't survive that, and if you do survive it, you're more than likely to come out crippled, even more than she already was.
I was gonna say. Hey, it depends on how you write it. It could have been, and we saw this kind of earlier in the scenes where the train was going around a pond. Have her drive into a pond that was nearby. You literally wrote the scene. You could have anything happen. You chose for her to be too scared to get off the train and to jump from one moving vehicle to another moving vehicle. It was very, very forced. It did not flow organically. It did not feel grounded in any sense of the word. That's why I mentioned it.
It's also a really half-assed attempt at trying to give some stakes with her cut off leg.
Yeah.
because like her prosthetic gets mangled, um, but it's not really all that debilitating because like she gets another one more or less immediately.
Mhm.
Um, and then when it's taken away from her when she gets captured in episode 3, um, the overweight white chick that's in charge of guarding her literally tosses it back to her after restraining her. It's like, here you go.
Yeah. It's like she's disabled, but by name only. And we'll keep showing you she's disabled, but we won't show you how a disability, whether it's being deaf or with which they leaned into a lot more, which is weird. Which is not a bad thing, weird, but is interesting because Hollywood usually, hey, we want to hire disabled people, but it has to be a visual impairment. We won't hire people who are schizophrenics. We won't hire people to play schizophrenic or to play people with depression because if it's not a physical ailment that you can see, it doesn't exist. So they always show you so it's interesting, and I do appreciate this. It's interesting that they always focus on the deaf thing, even though it really, really falls short. But they only really visually show you that she has a peg leg, and that's it. And that's it. Literally, you see when she first gets the new one, the temporary one, she walks awkwardly, and then the next scene, she's literally jumping off the roof to talk to Henry.
Yeah, like so in David,
Yeah.
with so take Spider-Man Far From Home, for example.
Mhm.
It finally does what I've been wanting them to do in a lot of Spider-Man movies. Well, they do this in Amazing Spider-Man 2 as well, where like something's wrong with his web shooters and he has to adapt.
Mhm.
Like that's interesting,
Yeah.
right? But they never really did the equivalent with Maya in regards to this disability that she has with her leg. Um,
This
she's
entire
always
show but it will, because we got flashbacks, we've seen her as a child. This entire show is her never needing to adapt to anything. She doesn't have to adapt to missing a leg. She doesn't have to adapt to being deaf. She doesn't have to adapt to struggle between Fisk and this world in Oklahoma and her relationships because she was deliberately avoiding people. She didn't adapt to a single fucking thing, and she never had to, which is definitively a Mary Sue.
And can we just touch on the fact that people online are simping for this show
Oh
like
yeah.
no other? This is the one thing I wanted to make sure we talked about. I don't understand where all of the praise for this show comes from. It is not street level. I saw this one tweet. I'm going to read this
Mhm.
literally verbatim.
Okay.
What I saw. Echo having single-handedly saved the street level side of the MCU is an insane feat.
That's abysmal.
What? Where did she save? What did she save? First off, what did she save? Because there was never a street level side of the MCU. Hawkeye and the end of No Way Home. That's it. All right. Secondly, what? What? The show is not street level. Anyone calling this a street level show saw the trailers and that's it. They wrote the show off like that.
Well, screw
Like,
street level. The show's not even good by Andy standard.
I know, but they're talking about this show as if it's like the reincarnation of Daredevil, as if it's like everything that
just
Daredevil was
because
great.
he's
Like
in
it's
it
marketed
for
to be.
98 seconds.
Yeah.
And
Like it
that
was
too,
marketed to be. Yeah.
they marketed the show as like the Daredevil reunion,
Mhm.
with a bunch of fan servicey elements, which is why you didn't even want to see the show. And it's literally not that, which at least would have been probably better. But
Yeah.
so this show aggravated the fuck out of me. I think this is easily the second worst show released in the past year, which is
Yes.
really sad.
Agreed. Yeah.
But anyway, it's terrible. It's got all of the worst parts of every other Marvel thing, and the worst part is it's an easy concept. I don't think making a show about Echo
Fair.
taking over a criminal enterprise in New York would have been that hard to manage.
Yeah.
And
It's been done before.
yeah, you could literally make the most cliche shit, and Marvel fans would have ate it up. And honestly,
Yeah.
I probably would have ate it up too. I wouldn't have said
Yeah.
it was great, but I would have ate it up.
Just watch a
And
few episodes of Law and Order, and you would have been fine.
I like the color grading and I like the fight scenes.
Yeah.
I even like the opening title sequence, but
Oh, I didn't like the title sequence, but
no, I get that, but
Yeah.
even having said all of that, I don't and David knows this. I don't know if I talked to you about this, Gabe. I don't really remember, but I watched Loki season 2, and I was like, I guess everyone snorted cocaine out of like Tom Hiddleston's asshole because I don't get it. I don't understand the like all the love and adoration for the second season of this show. It's I was so bored and disinterested, and not remotely invested. I will say, like, obviously Tom Hiddleston is great, um, but that's like the anchor for me, and everything else is just blah. Like, and even like Loki's thing as a character and trying to stop this, kind of amorphous event or whatever. Like, I just I just didn't care. Like, the investment just wasn't there for me. But at the very least, that's a clear character with a clear goal. Um, and there's genuine character growth there with an ending that's actually satisfying. Whereas this is not that.
No, at all. I did like Loki season 2, but that's a different podcast. That's right now. Let's finish wrap up Echo. Scully is the name of that's I don't think I ever wrote down the grandmother's name, but Scully is the grandfather who's now divorced with the grandmother. He asks Echo for a slip joint plier, where the slip joint pliers are. She fucking hands him channel locks. I would know. I work in I'm a handyman. That's me. I got annoyed at that. There's one scene where they're trying to figure out camera they want. Between Maya and Henry outside. Yes. So it's episode 2 at by the tail end of it. They can't figure out. This is where you'll see the discussion between Maya and Henry. This is when she's, oh, you want a Pop Tart? I'm having breakfast, the most important meal of the day. This is when they can't figure out what cameras and which lenses they want to use. So pay attention to that. Overall, not as bad as the first episode, but pretty bad. Episode 3, this is when they start throwing in the old timey shit, which I was like, this is coming out of nowhere. Her ancestors is also a Mary Sue, which is not surprising. They literally have written out, her father was a light horseman or whatever. Toko was a mighty force all on her own. When was the last time you had a man called a mighty force all on his own, as if that wasn't just show us? And this is my problem with these kind of narratives. Here's a character created for the sole purpose of trying to play the victim or some kind of form of oppression, when even when they're portrayed as being just as good or oftentimes better than men. Calling attention to the breaking of gender roles ultimately undermines the concept of gender equality by implying that this is an exception and not the status quo. This is not how you write strong female characters, whether they're supporting or leads. You don't tell us that they're amazing, but constantly fumble the ball when it comes to actually showing us. Nothing about Tolka, the 1800s ancestor, was good. Everything was a fourth wave feminist narrative propaganda that perfectly fits the description. I also loved when it said Tolka senses something, like she has spider senses. That was like bizarre. Scully also, when we first see Scully and the grandma talk to each other in the modern day, he was like, "Oh, you like it when I talk Indian to you." Again, you're screwing up the Native American representation here. They don't like. Do they like being called Indians? Do they not like being called Indians? Do they like being called Native Americans? Do they like being called the first people? It's tribe dependent. Also, it's state dependent, and let's just forget about it and just say, "Oh, you like when I talk Indian to you? Wasn't from India, so what do you?" Okay, whatever. Hilarious. Bonnie clearly doesn't understand that when a door is locked, for this, like at the skating rink, it means business is closed. Go home. No, instead she took that as a way to walk around to the opposite side of the building and try to break in. If you really needed to talk to your uncle, you would have called or texted him. Bizarre.
Yes. God, that was so damn forced. Like,
Yeah.
it made my blood boil.
It's like, oh, well, the lights are on, so somebody must be home. But the door, it's so stupid. Maya's deaf, but she's making an awful lot of noise. Yes. So when she frees the both of them, she's just hitting her hands on like all the things around her and making so much fucking noise. So I understand that she's deaf, so she can't hear, but to pretend to look for tools and shit while you're not even rummaging through the crates, instead of just tapping and hitting things and making drawing attention to yourself. This is something, even if you're deaf, this is something you would have become aware of through just lived experience. I can't hear this, but when other people are around me or staring at me, clearly that's an indication, a social indication that I'm doing something that's drawing attention. Similar to how most deaf people, by virtue of being deaf, and in my case, being born deaf, never have heard anything, you would have naturally learned, at least to some level, how to lip read. In the comics, she is a perfect lip reader. And I will quote, because I pulled it up early, I'll quote the Marvel fandom database really quickly. Born deaf, her remarkable lip reading ability delayed her diagnosis for a significant period. In the show, she's helpless to read lips unless you're signing to her. Everyone has to pander to her. The world revolves around her. She doesn't need to adapt. The world adapts to her. So everyone needs to sign to her, and it never becomes a hindrance or a problem. And the minute they try to go there, they immediately obfuscate and they redirect. Such as the interaction between Maya and the guy cleaning the shoes that works for Henry. It was 5 seconds and it didn't matter. It ultimately meant nothing.
Guys, I gotta go. Nice having the podcast. I know you guys are just gonna go over details.
Yeah, just nitpicking here.
Yeah, terrible show. 10 out of 10. Don't recommend. Just don't watch this show, please. Don't put yourself through it. Have a good one, yo.
It was great talking to you.
Yeah, have a good one, Cave.
See ya.
Let me just you're fine with me just skimming through the rest of them? Gotcha. Yeah. But that, again, another thing where being deaf is not a hindrance. Once again, Maya's supposed to be this endearing character we're supposed to relate to and root for, but she literally punches her cousin, maybe ex, in the face as she gets hauled off. So she get that made no sense to me. It's like, I'm gonna punch you in the face now, and she literally punches her cousin in the face to do what? Have the 3 armed gunmen haul you out, and now you're with them at gunpoint at all times, where you aren't protected, you aren't in a safer environment. Maya can't protect you. What did you accomplish? You literally punched her in the face, so you injured her, and you put her in more danger.
This is literally like,
what the fuck?
Yeah, this is like, they keep writing it like it's actually an X.
Yeah, no, but like, no, I know it's so bizarre, but it's outside of that. That scene made no sense. You literally put her in more danger and hurt her. What was that? And then they try to address it later when they escaped, when they were about to. But it's just like, again, it was, let's kind of acknowledge that you punched me. Well, I needed to make it look real. Why did you have to do it at all? I don't get it. It's so whatever. Everyone forgets how. Oh, so you're talking about the fight scenes. I enjoyed parts of all the fighting, but as a whole, I wasn't into it. And I think one of the worst fight scenes was at the skating rink. Everyone forgets, including Maya, occasionally throughout the fights forget how to actually fight, where they literally start overextending their arms. They're throwing their hand from a distance to hit instead of actually throwing a punch. They forget how to throw punches. And I've seen a lot of stunt coordinators and a lot of stuntmen talk about their experiences. I watch a lot of Corridor Crew. And it's this thing where there are ways to fake it, and there are ways to guide the act. But this is also why you train for fucking 2 weeks before the fight scenes. And this is also why fight scenes and the choreography takes so long to shoot. As I have actually been in the same. I've spoken to Mike Coulter. He played Luke Cage. I spoke to him, and one of the reasons why he I'm not going to talk about what we actually talked about, but what I am going to say is, through that conversation, I learned that fight scenes alone, regardless of how short they are, they take 2 to 3 days bare minimum. And that's talking to shoot the fight scene, not the prep for it, not the workout routine, not learning the choreography and making sure everyone's safe, not the safety standards they have to go through padding and this, that, and the other, and whether or not your costume, as most stunt women are fully aware of, unfortunately, uh, whether or not you have a costume where you can hide the padding, that it's rough and it takes a long time, and maybe they just rushed the choreography and the training for some of these fight scenes because it doesn't look real. It looks like, okay, my fist is coming, now block it. Oh, now you blocked it, and now I'm going to act injured when you punch me. And then it skips to other parts where they regain the knowledge and the experience of fighting and they start punching for real, and then it happens again. And then Maya does this sometimes too within that same fight scene. And it goes back and forth. That was bizarre. Oh, and then even in that fight scene, Mary Sue shows up again, and she starts using the arcade pistol cables as whips. When would she ever have had the time to learn how to use whips? And she's using it pretty well, like Indiana Jones well. So first of all, how did you remove the cables from the arcade itself? Have you ever played an arcade? You can't just pull those things out. Secondly, that you're using them as whips. You've been trained to use guns. Maybe knives. I don't think Wilson Fisk bothered to teach you how to use to throw a tomahawk or whips or chains or swords because we live in 2024. So that was bizarre to me. But of course, because as Mary Sue's are written, you're just good at everything. So there's that. The art piece Scully, her grandfather made.
Before you go on, I do want
Okay.
to point out some of my own criticisms with that fight in particular.
Okay.
Because I thought most of it was genuinely cool
Yeah.
and exciting. But yeah, her being able to just rip out cables out of an arcade game like that, dumb. I'm sorry, just dumb. And then also like earlier in the fight, before she smashes through the wall with one of the guys and goes skidding across the floor,
Must be a
and
very thin
then
wall.
and then smacks his head into the ground. First off, no, like just no. You're a grown ass woman. You don't have super strength. But like you are not plowing a grown ass man through a wall and creating so much momentum that you're gonna slide across the
Yeah,
floor.
I was gonna mention that.
Like that's
They slid 20 feet. That was quite a distance, and it's not even just a sliding. That's a lot of momentum and power you can't get unless you're Luke Cage on the street level side of things.
Yeah, there's no way. Like you're not a super powered character at this point. Like you're just a woman.
Her hands aren't swirling yellow yet, so it doesn't make it even that. But yeah, so it's
here's the other thing. Like,
and
to
look, you can
piggyback
have
off of that,
strong, talented
she
women do these, but like, come on.
she knocks out one of the guys and then grabs him by the collar and pulls him away pretty easily, and then props him up somewhere else in that back room like a horror movie villain.
Oh yeah, it was like, well, he helped her, obviously. He's like, "Oh, you want me to stand here? Oh, on this stool? Oh, okay. You want me to hang it? Gotcha. I'll just for you, sweetheart." It was yeah. It's so, and the fact that she had the time to do that, like they're circling and surrounding her, and she's just here in this little laser tag corner, like they can't see me, so I'll just do this. It's so weird. Whatever. The brooch art
But
metal thing.
there's but before you get to that, David.
Okay.
So like the last person that she fights, the black guy, of all the things we've been mentioning, that was one of the things that stuck out to me the most as really hokey and kind of laughable. That she's like going pound for pound, blow for blow with this guy. He just square up punches her in the face, and she just keeps going like it was nothing burger.
I eat those. Remember that?
And then like she knocks him out with her jacket? Question mark.
Yeah.
Like that was not so awkward. I didn't even know what happened.
Yeah, it's like again, it's Mary Sue popping her head out again from the corner. It's I can do it because I'm perfect. Yeah, it's weird. Anything else? Oh, you found out
Yeah,
about that scene?
yeah.
That's it.
I just I wanted to cover that.
It was just yeah, it was very, very most of it, and I liked the environment. It was new, it was fresh. The laser tag fighting, having a fist fight in a laser tag, nice. But the in-betweens and trying and forcing interest. It's interesting because we're doing this rather than how do we tell a story like we talk every single time we talk about we have to call back to Warrior because they know what the fuck they're doing. It's a story. How do we talk make this fight a story, tell something? And it just she's perfect. That's all you're trying to tell her. She can do whatever she can do, whatever a man can do, and more. It's like men can't are you either learn that like they can't just do any all of these things just because they're dudes either. You have to be well trained for it.
And conveniently,
Yeah.
um, there's like really no stakes. Like,
At all.
um, yeah, Kingpin can just call them off, and like,
Yeah.
oh well, okay, all right.
And the funny thing is the actor Henry, he's actually a pretty good actor. The actor Henry, he's like, "Why did they do that? What's happening?" Dude, shut the fuck up and go home. Be happy you're not dead. why you why are you so concerned? It's so funny. But yeah. Anyways, moving on. The art brooch thing Scully makes for Maya's new leg. That shit's gonna fall off. The fact that you don't already have it fixtured to her leg, you have to have it separately, show it to her, talk about it, and then attach it. That thing's gonna fall off. Just give it like a day or two. She's gonna kick someone the wrong way at the wrong angle. Either the leg will fall off or the brooch will fall off. Like, oh no, the thing I didn't really like or appreciate. Oh no.
And 9 times out of 10, she's
So bizarre.
wearing pants and it's gonna be covered
Which she
anyway. So
told you about, which I did appreciate that, but it's just like it's you have to constantly wear your culture on your sleeve. It's bizarre, which she technically does with the jacket. so whatever. Moving on from that. Uh oh, the house thing was so confusing to me. First of all, she broke into this house. She slept on the couch, and every other episode after that, she slept in the bed. Okay, so clearly no one's living here. Why did you feel the need to sleep on the couch and not the bed? But okay, I'm nitpicking. That's fair. That's just me. Fine. She's sleeping on the bed every day after. But why is the house it's lived in? There's things there. So what's going on? We find out, episode 3, we find out her grandmother is the one who kept the house in pristine condition. Which explains why it's still there untouched. But also that means the grandmother has paying for the mortgage and utilities on that house to just sit there and collect us for 20 fucking years. Anyone else with half a brain would have either sold it or rented it out as an Airbnb. And Maya just conveniently shows up in Oklahoma 20 years later, like, oh, I guess the key is still here. And oh, I guess no one's living here. So I'll just pop right in.
yeah, and I don't like
And there's no
conveniently.
and there are no
Yeah,
consequences
there's
to
no
it either.
consequences because no one. Yeah, she doesn't actually have to forge a relationship with anyone, like actually reconnect with anybody.
No.
Um,
It's
because
no.
that would require conflict and stress, and everything has to be easy for this character. So,
Yes.
um,
It's ridiculous. And it's this thing where even when characters find out, even characters we haven't even seen because it's like whispers, it's Maya, that's how the grandmother finds out. It's this thing where everyone just loves her. They just love her. It's just like, oh my god, Maya's back. The last time you saw her at a distance was 20 years ago, and she was a literal child. How do you? It's that frustrates me. It's just she's a talk of the town. It's weird. The ending of that episode is ridiculous. So she starts off at the house midday. The sun is still out. She hops on her bike. She drives around town. We get a little meaningless, not a montage of her just skimming past different places. Then it's dark. Nothing happens. It's just that she's just driving around. Then it's literal nighttime. She drives. She comes back to the house. So she didn't go anywhere. She went for a stroll for 6 hours, came back, and Kingpin's there. It's so weird. Where did you go? You didn't pick up groceries. Clearly, you don't eat. But like, what? What are you trying to? What story are you trying to tell with her leaving, driving off for hours, doing nothing, not going anywhere, coming back, and Kingpin just being there? It felt like they had her trying to do something in between, and they scrapped it and just cobbled just stitched the scenes together. Like, she just went out for a 3-hour drive. No, the sun was out. It's pitch black. It was 6 hours at best. Like, it's really, 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 really bizarre. Anyway, episode 4. The contact lenses. You and I have talked about it off the podcast, but let me address this. Again, another failed attempt at oh, she's deaf. And here's Kingpin gives her a contact lens. And the contact lens uses sign language to help her read people's understand other people, as if that's been a struggle before. Maya is deaf. She's not illiterate. She can read. She can write like all people, all deaf people, because they've also had to learn how to read and write. So why would you go through the trouble of creating such expensive, first and foremost, but also intricate, innovative piece of technology to make her see other people sign, instead of just speech to text, which has existed for decades, over a decade? It's so bizarre, especially because it also butchers anyone's attempt to understand or learn through the show ASL. And it's not that you're going to watch this and you're suddenly going to learn how to sign, but if you don't know anything about ASL, American Sign Language, you won't know inherently that ASL is, by all stretch of the meaning, it's paraphrasing. You're going to sign certain phrases, and the captions don't help with that. And not that they should, because you should be able to read the captions just like Maya should be reading speech to text. But the thing is, it's paraphrasing. It's, I'll give you home, I'll give you them, I'll give you people, I'll give you community. It's keywords, and you have to interpret and fill in the blank as a deaf person, because you don't have time for ands and buts and is and etc. They take up space. There's not enough. There's only so many hand signs you can physically form or make. So it's key points. A lot of them were adjectives. Descriptions, and nouns, person, places, and things, but not the in betweens. So the fact that he gave her this lens to make it more convenient for them to communicate, but instead of speech to text, you did sign language, so she still has to put in the work to interpret what exactly you're saying, is fucking stupid. So fucking stupid. Almost defeats the purpose entirely. He still could have just brought on an interpreter and it would have been the same fucking thing. It's so dumb. I think it was just another Marvel / Disney attempt at, ooh, we're gonna Disneyfy this and add some quirky little CGI stuff because we have the money to do so. And it's so dumb and it's so half-assed. And what you do again, just like the Native American stuff, just like the disability stuff, is this is a lot of people's first foray into understanding the world that of a disabled person, or in this regard, because there's other disabilities, obviously, but also being deaf. And they're going to look at that and say, oh, that's ingenious. Everyone should do it. Just like, no, let them fucking read. They can do it. It's so dumb. It's the dumbest fucking thing. But you know what's worse? What's even worse than that? They make even at episode 5, when the mother shows up, and I'll get to it, but it's even worse. And you don't write a story about a disabled person and offer this literary out and then don't give it to them because it's nonsensical. But I'll get back to that. It's so stupid because it ultimately undermines any kind of physical or mental ailment, or I'll get to it. But yeah, it's so fucking stupid. And now we've met. Oh, and the grandma sees visions too. Ooh, there's 2 of them. In the middle of Granny, and here we go. We were talking about this earlier, but I want to preface this and actually lay it out. In the middle of the grandma explaining the visions, her signing, and again, the deaf aspect, her signing turns into a verbal narration, so we can visualize, we can actually see the flashback, which defeats the entire purpose of the show being centered around a deaf lead. Because there's very easily, you could have had both her signing with the text on the bottom and had, if you absolutely needed it, if it was absolutely necessary, have had that visual flashback in some floating crossfaded like corner somewhere, because she's, at the end of the day, this is the story. This is a conversation, a trying to build a bridge, a 20-year gap bridge, and misunderstanding of, you didn't want me, you disowned me, this, that, and the other, between Maya and her grandma. And what you have is the grandma's trying to explain the visions and explain her experiences, and leading towards the ultimate confrontation of, you didn't want me, etc. She's signing to Maya. This is about Maya, and this is about Maya trying to, and about the grandma trying to bridge that gap and plead in a sense, and build an understanding. And what you do is you go from that to, well, here's a flashback, so now she's going to talk normally for all the able-bodied people. Maya's still so while you're watching all this shit happening, you're literally watching it and hearing the grandma narrate. Maya is still sitting in a kitchen watching her grandma sign this to her, and we lose that, which is thematically and narratively important because it's about Maya. So it doesn't even matter that she's deaf anymore, because we'll just skip to a flashback where it's being narrated over. Stupid. Fucking stupid. Did you notice that?
I didn't.
Because you're, and that's part of the problem, is you hear, like most people, you're not hard of hearing, you don't have a hearing impairment, you're not deaf. So if you're not paying attention to how the story's being told about a deaf character, you're just going to take it and just go over your head, which means you didn't learn anything about Maya and her disability. You didn't come out of the show any better off or more informed than it. If anything, it made no difference to you. You're not more empathetic or sympathetic or educated on the deaf community. It's stupid. It steps on its own foot. And it's not the reason, but it's a big, large part of it. Moving on. The actual visions of flashbacks itself are stupid, because she actually she's literally skimmed over the visions themselves. And all she was doing was ranting about how I was giving birth to your mom. All those flashbacks are just about the birth. And I quote, "Against the doctor's orders, my family took me out of the White Hospital." End quote. Is there not a White Hospital? To say that there's a White Hospital would also mean that there's an opposite, an antithesis to it. So a not White Hospital. So is the show also trying to touch on Native American historical racism? Because that's it. You dip your toe in the water. Granny's a little bit racist, but all grandparents are. Is that what you're trying to say?
Racist to white people. That's totally fine.
But like, is this the extent of it? Is that all we get? The White Hospital? Again, the Native Americans, you're trying to bring in, have diversity and inclusion, but you're not you're not telling us anything. It's ham-fisted that Native Americans are in the show. Have a nice day. Like, that's it. Like, tell us about the hardships of discrimination, and tell us about how this tribe is different from other tribes. You don't have to, be fair, you don't have to touch about how all these Native American tribes actually hate each other. You don't have to talk about how they discriminate against each other. You don't have to talk about that. But it's there. And you've done nothing to educate people about the community. And this is the closest you get, which is literally dipping your toe in the water, in the puddle
it's all surface
anything.
level. And it tells me that so many of these people, like whether it's, that Native American director or the actress or anyone else who's like actually Native American and had their hands in this production, is just as ideologically captured as any other navel-gazing liberal who thinks that they're, being virtuous with this obsession with like the illusion of quote unquote diversity and quote unquote representation. Like it's a check mark. It's a quota. It's just
exactly.
It's
we got it off the list.
Yeah, there's nothing real or genuine about any of it. Like congratulations. Like most of the people in front of the camera are Native American. A bunch of the people behind the camera are Native American. But all that's coming across as a result of that is some authentic costumes, and that's about it. Like this does not do a particularly good job of informing me about that community and that culture any more than I knew when I started.
Mhm.
And that's really sad. That's
And
really
this
fucking sad, especially
and
when
the
you have like such such a blind and implicit bias towards this community, and you can't even really showcase it, really get into the nitty gritty, really
Mhm.
um, show people something that they couldn't see anywhere else. But like this just utterly fails to do that. This might as well be Marvel's Pocahontas.
Yeah, and the thing is too is like even with the music and the soundtrack, like they fumble that too because you get some Native American songs in the background here and there, but there's no introduction as to because none of these like tribal songs they have meaning behind it. This is what this means. This is what that means, and they don't touch upon it. Hey, we have Native American songs playing in the background. That's good enough. It's stupid, but also they also have Christian songs playing in the background, and they didn't they didn't want to touch on that either, and that's not a believe it or not, that's not a contradiction. There is a lot of cognitive dissonance within. Again, I've talked to and worked with Native Americans, but nonetheless, again, it's there to pander to the least common denominator, but not actually to be equitable when it comes to the quality of diversity and actual inclusion. It's just we're just we're here to give them the spotlight, literal Marvel spotlight. We're here to give them the spotlight, and that's it. We gave you your 15 minutes of fame. Have a nice life. And we're moving on to the next, to pander to the other, the next least common denominator. It's ridiculous. It's actually in a it's a slap in the face of what they've been asking for, and it goes against their culture and their history of wanting more respect for the community, and it's very disrespectful. And what you'll get out of this is best case scenario, Native Americans are going to hate this show. Worst that's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, Native Americans are going to praise and love this show only insofar as, hey, at least we're out there and people are talking about us.
Yeah, at least they threw you your bone, and you're gonna be
Exactly.
happy.
Exactly. Anyways, getting back into it. Yeah, she the grandma goes off talking about the birth of her mom, the birth of Maya's mom. But she actually doesn't say anything. She doesn't actually answer any questions. If you actually go back and watch the scene, she doesn't actually answer any questions about the visions. All she says is it's just guesswork, and ancestors are trying to communicate to you at your time of need, which is awfully vague and awfully convenient. Anyways, moving on. Here's the very first pro I'll give this show because I didn't think it had it, but it did. Kingpin talks to Maya at gunpoint when he's at gunpoint in the casino. I thought I also like Native Americans casinos. It's a stereotype, but it's also like it's true. And he's at a casino. I thought that was funny. I'm glad they put that in there. But anyways, Kingpin talks to Maya at a casino. He says he's always seen her as a daughter, and I'm glad that they at least acknowledge that Kingpin, and I quote, doesn't care enough to learn sign language, end quote. Which is what that was Maya's response to him, which is why he gifted her the contact lens. So they acknowledge. So I'll give them that. That's a very big pro. We actually get some character depth with. We've always had, we everything with Kingpin, but now we have a little bit of something between the two. Not necessarily Maya, but between the two and their relationship, where she's acknowledging that I called you uncle, you see me like a daughter, but for 20 years, you haven't even bothered to learn sign language once. You've already had an interpreter. And now that interpreter's gone, or you're not going to hire a new one because ASL interpreters are a dime a dozen, I suppose. Where you're going to give me contact lens for your convenience when you had so much time to learn. You clearly don't care about me all that much. I will give them that. I like that because I was waiting for that and I kept not seeing it, and it's finally here. So that's the one. That's the first out of two pros. I'll give it. Um, Later on in the episode, we actually see Kingpin taking off the eye patch. The same thing with the dinner stuff. Oh, I guess I skipped the dinner stuff. Yeah, the dinner stuff we don't need to talk about. It was the only problems I had with the dinner bullshit was the fact that um it's so stupid because the dinner was like, let's have dinner. No one ate or drank anything. He was only there for 10 minutes. And it felt like there was no stakes. It felt like there was no danger. It felt like Maya was just being paranoid, and Vincent D'Onofrio's acting is so good that I'm watching him going through all these interactions like, no, this man is being genuine and he's being trying to be vulnerable with you. And you're looking for every single reason to just think he's trying to kill you. And I don't feel that danger. There's
I don't either.
there's conflicting acting in this scene, and there's conflicting themes in this scene. Is this a Kingpin father-like figure trying to reconcile differences with a surrogate daughter, or is this a daughter trying to protect herself through a mental chess game with this a powerful overarching character that she thought she defeated but has returned? And it
And
felt like
what
those
makes me
themes were
so,
clashing.
yeah, what makes me so frustrated with those scenes? Speaking about what you're saying, David, I think the big thing is her biological father that
And again,
doesn't.
just not in the picture. Just like,
Yeah, not only
we'll
just not in the
mention it.
picture, like just not talked about. Like, yeah, motherfucker, you had my actual father executed, and then you framed someone else and had me go after him, knowing full well that it was you who orchestrated his death, and that's why I shot your ass in the face in the first place. Like, that conversation isn't being had.
Like, and that's the thing that frustrates me. At the end of Hawkeye, when she shoots him, it doesn't matter. We as an audience know this is Maya's motivation. This is why she's doing it, even if Kingpin doesn't and he's guessing. Echo offers the opportunity for them to sit down and have these conversations and get to why did you have him killed, or that I'm going to acknowledge. It's just Kingpin just knows. He just knows, and Maya knows that he knows, and it's just something that's literally brushed over. But they never actually had the conversation, and I think that would have been incredibly important, especially as a surrogate father figure, kind of uncle. And it's disrespectful to the characters, and again, the IP, not respecting your IP. But even within the show, outside of the comics, there's no character development there. There's no relationship building because every time you get an opportunity to do it, you make a left turn. It's weird. And then again, they don't eat anything, and he literally just gets up and leaves. It was like, okay. But we also see in that scene, he takes off his eye patch. But even better, and I was like, I suspected, like, is his eye still there, or is that a fake eye? What's going on? Later on in the next episode, we see him take it off while he's in the jet, broad daylight. So not only did Maya shoot this man in the face with a gun, not a BB gun, with an actual pistol, at point blank range in the fucking face, and he dropped dead to the floor. Not only did he survive that, tis but a scratch. Like, that's it. He still has his eye. The eye patch is literally there for the eye that's to heal, but he can see. And we get that in episode 5, where he's just like, I don't need the eye patch anymore. I just have scars. And it's like, that's cool, bro, but you got shot in the fucking face. Not even a foot away. And it's so fucking stupid. And you told me that they never addressed this, and I was already pissed. But now seeing it, holy shit, do they not address anything? Not only do they not address the fact that, well, you shot me in the face, but please kill me. Like, he's literally goading her to hit me, kill me with the hammer that I killed my father with, because I'm Kingpin and I need reminders of where I come from. Like, dude,
here's another thing. This is why I hate.
It's so fucking stupid.
I hate this show so much, and I hate the writers in particular for being so goddamn cowardly.
Yeah.
And the director talking out of the side of her mouth, saying like we leaned into her being a villain.
No, you didn't.
Why the fuck is she even hesitating to kill him? Like,
where's the motivation to kill him? Where's the motivation not to kill him?
Exactly.
Where's
He
Yeah.
had your father executed. That hasn't changed. So why are you hesitating?
That
What,
entire scene plays out as I was doing all of this because I need to destroy shit. I'm a fire starter. But nonetheless, like I'm going to make my place and I'm going to fight for it. And it's like, I've always seen you like a daughter, and I'm giving you the keys. Not only am I giving you the keys to the castle, literally kill me because I have regrets now. So, and remorse, which
yeah,
is anti Kingpin, but okay. Anyways, and it's just like, no, I'm not gonna kill you because I'll get it on my own. Just, bitch, what are you fucking doing? You're getting what you on the surface want. You're also getting another. He's literally giving you the opportunity to kill him, which is bizarre. Like, I don't know what kind of gamble he's playing. He is in a casino, but I don't know what kind of gamble he's playing. But it's so bizarre because it's just like, I'm going to give you a. Not only does she have a gun, but I'll give you a better weapon than a gun, a meaningful hammer. So he gives her that. And he's like, beat me to death with it. And he lets her. And it's this fucking thing where, and this is what pisses me off. And I was going to mention this at the last episode and to the final thing, but I'll mention it now because it's so irritating. Because this scene exemplifies, it's supposed to be the scene where he has nothing to live for, essentially, or he has so much remorse and regret now because reasons that he's fine with dying. Dude, what the fuck happened to Vanessa? Where's Vanessa? Out of this whole show, where the fuck did Vanessa go? She was such an integral part of Kingpin's rise to power and finding love through that, but also Vanessa being an accomplice of sorts. And they worked so well together in Daredevil throughout all the scenes with, like, she was always there in the background somewhere, if not physically there, mentioned. It became his reason to attain more security, more power, more safety. And in Echo, Vanessa's never heard, mentioned, talked about, seen nothing. She's gone, as if she, but not as if like they broke up. She doesn't exist. Where's Vanessa?
it- I would say this is a good question. But I mean, but just based on what I know about the show and like the development of it, they've they were pretty wishy-washy on whether or not, and it's been like this from the beginning since bringing Charlie Cox back. They've been very wishy-washy on whether or not this was. Well, I shouldn't even say wishy-washy because there's some of that, but generally speaking, this was not gonna be the exact same Daredevil that we got in the Netflix show. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like this Elseworlds version that like happens to be in the MCU. Like that's kind of how they were playing it. Um, until they realized just how fucking stupid that is, and decided, okay, finally, that stuff is canon. We're going to, pull it into the larger MCU, and we're officially going to put all those shows in the proper like MCU timeline, retroactively. Um, the problem with that is, and this now we're at the point where the MCU feels just as hokey and convoluted as comics often can when you have too many writers that aren't talking to each other.
I don't know what Kevin Feige's doing.
Yeah,
I like his work, but I don't know what he's doing. But the continuity is off. The interconnectedness of these stories are off.
yeah, but
And
like fundamentally, like they they're just fucking they're scared. What they should have done, um, was simply renew that show. That's number one. They should have renewed that show, and they should have brought back as many of the original cast and crew as they could have.
they should have prioritized it before Echo.
Yeah, they most definitely. Because Charlie Cox isn't getting any younger, and
Neither is
it,
Vincent D'Onofrio. Exactly.
exactly. So it was stupid for them to go about this the way they went about it in the first place. But yeah, because like roping all that stuff in is now retroactive, that they got to go back and play damage control, because like at the end of Daredevil season 3, Kingpin's sent to prison again.
Yeah.
And like how he got out again and like amassed his criminal empire and like all of that. We don't really know, but he's not because the whole thing was if he ever got out again and came after um, Foggy or Karen Page, then um, then Daredevil would expose his wife for conspiracy to commit murder.
Yeah.
Um, it, but since that actress is probably off doing other things or maybe even retired, like this just is now like a gap, like an amoeba that we have to work around. Um,
Yeah, it's just she was my frustration is she was so integral to the growth and progression of Kingpin outside of Daredevil's fucking with my plans. And it really that dynamic really brought something special to a character like Kingpin, which I'm not sure we've seen in the comics, but I'm not gonna swear to that. I don't because I don't know. But it's this thing where you normally wouldn't see it with a mob boss, and it's just like, no, he's still a very vicious evil mob boss, but he also found love, and she's almost just as cruel, and it's like a match made in hell. And it was, but we saw genuine character growth, and I love the way this season ended, where Charlie Cox was like, no, like I will expose her. He literally had her flown out somewhere else, and she's living the life, living it up from a distance, but because it's out of necessity, not because they want it. And we see it while he's in prison, and we see after the fact, like Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin is begrudgingly okay with it because as long as Vanessa is safe, as long as I know she is safe, that's all that matters while I'm in prison and handcuffed. And that meant something, and that was impactful, especially for that kind of character. And then we get into Echo, where it's like, well, you're a surrogate daughter to me, and yeah, it's just like Vanessa doesn't exist, and it I think it takes away so much of what came before, and I, it's really really disrespectful to the characters, even the actors who have had to go through these things and it's like you were saying earlier about, oh well, Vincent D'Onofrio was he was improvising his lines. Yeah, because you don't care about these characters. He had to fix it for you, and I don't know. Maybe there was a scene where he tried to mention Vanessa, even that would have been enough. But mention him, and they're like, no, you can't mention Vanessa because we don't know if we can get her. Or we don't know if we. It's so stupid. It's terrible. And look, if you can't get her, you could always recast. I'm not a fan of it, but it's not. Marvel has never strayed away from recasting. They've tried to stick with, but they from Iron Man 1 to Iron Man 2, they immediately recasted James Rhodes. So
yeah,
they're not
I'll find
scared of
people in
doing
my-
it, but yeah, it's not as if that's never been an option. I'm just saying they did the same thing with Cassie Lang, Scott Lang's daughter. But the thing is, for no reason, that was very bizarre. But for no reason, they recast her. But again, it's this thing where if casting was really the issue, which I don't think it was, I think it's what you said, which is like behind the scenes, they didn't really know what the fuck they were doing. They thought they did, and then they changed their minds because they realized they didn't know what the fuck they were doing.
Yep.
But that pisses me off. Where the fuck is Vanessa? Anyways, done with episode. Finally getting to last and the shortest, thankfully, episode. Another flashback because we can't get enough of child Maya. Enough of that because people don't grow up and learn. But what we see is Maya is throwing rocks for all intents. She's slingshotting rocks at birds. She hits one of them. It's about to die. She gives it to her mother. Her mother shows her healing powers. So her grandma earlier, when she has a gift and she's a healer. It's okay, grandparent like nonsense and whatever they believe. Fine, you chalk it off to whatever. Maya literally saw her mom heal. Her hands glow, heal a dying bird when she was a child. Why is any of these things a shock to her if we're literally being introduced in episode 5 that no, Maya's known about this all along? What is this shit? So she's known about the powers, at least to some extent. There's been some exposure to it. Why is this a fucking surprise to her? It's And this is what I wanted to mention earlier about the deaf thing, and you can't introduce these elements with someone with a kind of disability. You just don't know how to write at that point. If her mom is a healer, you're introducing multiple problems. First and foremost, why isn't she on national television? People would have eaten that up. She would have been on Johnny Carson show or something like, "Oh, show us what she's a circus animal. Show us what you can do. Let you heal the sick and let you heal cancer and let you heal this." No, Maya's mom literally just sits there in Oklahoma and doesn't do a goddamn thing, which is bizarre. Secondly, is and and look, if you're living out on a reservation and the community knows that you're a healer, at least do something, monetize it so you can actually build some kind of infrastructure and police because they don't have a whole lot of money on reservations. That's assuming whatever. But the problem with introducing a character or a story element where you can just heal people on the verge of death and you can just heal, you're known to be a healer of sorts and you're using arbitrary magic to do it. Why couldn't Maya's mother heal her own hearing impairment, hearing disability? And more so, you grew up deaf, had a child, and didn't bother to heal the child? What? So can you heal or can't you heal? Or does that work on arbitrary magical rules too?
I wanted a diverse child, David.
I know that. But then if you're creating superpowers that didn't exist in the comics, you're just doing it because we said so, because we want to do it, because Maya's not interesting enough on her own. And we're going to go in the Native American route and do ancestry because that's so important. And we're going to go that route. But they're also boring, so we're going to give them powers. How can you have a disabled character not healed by a literal healer? If you want to talk about villains, I think her mom's a villain because you're like Big Pharma at that point. Like, oh, we have the cure. It's gonna cost you a pretty penny though, and you can't afford it. That's the equivalent. That's what it is. You can't have a power. You can't have a character with superpowers that can heal people, deliberately choosing not to heal people. It's like, oh, it's so close, but not cigar. It's like the surgery is going to cost $10,000, and you need to pay up now, or we're just not going to do it. And it's a life-saving procedure. Like that's the
Yeah.
same thing. So either her mom's evil and you guys are terrible writers, or her mom can only heal very specific ailments for reasons, and you're a terrible writer. So it's so stupid. The one and only last pro I'll give this show is that they referenced Roxxon oil. I love referencing Roxxon oil. In the comics, they are just this anything evil you can do, they will do for the sake of money. That's it. I love that they referenced it. But the fact that I'm giving this show a thumbs up on a reference tells you a lot about the show. Oh, that we we've already talked about. Also, in that same scene, this happens twice. Maya doesn't know what she's doing with her food. She's neither playing with it nor eating it, so it's very awkward. I will chalk that up to not the actress because she's not really an actress, as she's herself has admitted, which is another thing. But whatever. I'll chalk it up to bad direction, bad directorial influence, because you have her she's not supposed to eat the prop food that's probably been sitting there for 10 hours and it's cold. I've done that. It's fair. Don't eat it. But at the same time, don't have her awkwardly poke at it with a fork and not give her directions of what to actually do with it. Because she's literally just sitting there in a diner, just like moving a fork around. It's weird. Her phone vibrates on the table. She picks it up and looks at it, and she's getting a text from Henry or someone. So this deaf person has her cell phone on the table, not on her person, so she can't feel it vibrate. She can't hear it vibrate. So how does she know she's getting a text message? She puts hold on. She puts the phone down. She looks outside. She sees the bird. She gets another text message, and it's still on the phone. This happens 2 times in a row. Is the woman deaf or not? What is going on here? Go back and rewatch the scene. It's very, very bizarre. And no, she did not look at her phone first. see that it glue up, it lit, and she got a text message. That's not what happened. She looked at it too soon. She looked at it right when it vibrated. She's either deaf or she's not. Next, I already mentioned that. Oh, also, if the mother had healing powers, she would also either be on one of two lists: the FBI, but also it's Marvel. She would have been on a Shield watch list at the very least, but no one knows about Echo, so probably not. The vision of her mother tried to offer more exposition about the ancestry, but once again, doesn't actually tell us anything. What they were prior to coming to the Americas and becoming Native Americans, or how they could help. It's just that they can help. It's very, very arbitrary. Are they aliens? Are they from another dimension, like they tried to do with a Miss Marvel? We don't know. Things are happening. I think the actual costume made by the grandma for Maya, for the Echo, looks incredibly lame and very flammable. That's my personal artistic aesthetic. If I don't like it, that's fine. If you like it, that's fine too. We're allowed to not like and like similar, but at the same, it does look
I
very
know.
flammable. At the
I
same
heard
point, though, and I've seen people talk about this. Her street outfit, like her jacket, looks like a much better MCU grounded costume than the actual suit itself. The suit is a huge departure from looking grounded or practical. Um, and then we get. I do appreciate, however.
it even looks more over designed than what she wears when she joins New
Thank you,
Avengers.
thank you. Hopefully she doesn't. But she probably will. Um, But I do
What?
appreciate this one thing. It was made in a garage, sewn by her grandmother, and it's very clearly, unlike Miss Marvel and unlike other characters.
Wait, David, did you hear what I said?
What?
It sounded like you were talking to somebody else there for a second.
No, no, no.
But
Someone just. My friend was walking past.
okay, um, I, her that new costume that she gets looks more over designed than what she
Oh, oh,
wears when
oh, I'm sorry.
New
I
Avengers.
heard that part. I thought you said something else because yeah, someone was walking past. No, yeah, no, exactly. It again over designed. But to be fair, I don't know if that's supposed to be authentic to the Native American or the specific tribe or not. I'm not going to say anything because I don't know. Um, but we already know Marvel has had a spree, a running spree of just they can't help themselves but over design their costumes as of late. Um, but the one thing I will give them is it's the only costume we've gotten in recent years that doesn't look like Stark level equipment made at a garage sale. Like the Miss Marvel costume she got in her own show. There's no fucking way. There's no fucking way he just made that on his own. Um, but outside of that, I don't like it. Um, the Kingpin confrontation dialogue, it's like at the very before they start, like that was terrible. Even and like you told me prior to the podcast, even Vincent D'Onofrio could not save that conversation. It was terrible. It was incoherent because they were going from one thing to another thing. Um, it's also bizarre. He also clearly didn't notice that she was looking behind him every single time he opened his mouth, not towards him. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. So look, we understand as an audience, we understand he doesn't know she threw out the contact lens. We also realize that ever since she threw out the contact lens, she didn't go back to being, having to adapt to anything. It was just okay, and I had it, and then I threw it out, and nothing's changed. So he was just talking to her. So we understood as audience, he didn't know that. Um, we also understood Bonnie didn't know it, but that she had it in the first place. But she was signing. None of that was weird. But Kingpin didn't catch on. Like, I'm talking to you. Why aren't you looking at me? It's it's it was very, very bizarre. Um, whatever. Even weirder. They start fighting. The Native American suit has another Native American suit underneath it. What? You saw that, right? She just like half-assed threw off her suit like it was a jacket. It was some weird camera pan that wiped so you couldn't see a transition. And it's just like it's a whole new suit. What happened? Where where did this come from?
the
So wait, so the first one was a parka or like a jacket, like a jacket? I'm so confused. But it just okay. She
They
has new
needed to
suits.
sell more toys.
It's it's weird, but okay. She has a new suit, and then 5 minutes later she has a newer suit. Right. Even Iron Man took into the third act to have an actual third suit, or the second act to have a second suit. But okay, she took 5 minutes, but Mary suits. I don't know what's going on, but fine. I do all Native Americans have secondary suits under their first suits? I don't think so. I've worked with them and it didn't look like it. But whatever. It's it's not culturally authentic. I'll tell you that. Yada yada yada. Okay, so then she's just magically. I have been. I don't know what's going on with any of these visions. I had to talk to my grandma about it, and she didn't really give me any answers. And I'm still having visions and sporadic hand glowy stuff. That okay, and then at the tail end of it, I just mastered my powers and I can do whatever I want. So to the point of I can give other people powers and they're fighting with me and we're all strong independent female women now. And it's just clearly all of it is just bad and arbitrary and things are happening because we said so. Clearly. What I want to know is what I'm really curious about, what the writers have to say about this and the director. Can she give her powers to anybody or just other Native Americans? Not only that, can she give her powers to any Native American or only the ones in her tribe? And that's going to piss off a lot of other Native Americans and other tribes, depending on how you answer that. It's just arbitrary and stupid, and it doesn't make any fucking sense. Henry gets involved, and he shoots the other guy we saw earlier. Good actor too, and I think he was great at casting the mob guy, working directly under Kingpin. He shoots Henry shoots him, so he fires the missile up into the air, and it explodes. Here's another misunderstanding of how things in the world work, like windshields, whether or not cracking someone next actually hurts or kills them, and missiles exploding when it doesn't come into contact with literally anything. If you shoot a missile, they're all on a timer. That's not how that works. It's impact. It's that's how you know a missile is a dud, when it hits the ground and it doesn't explode. Okay. So that happened. Classic missile explodes midair without contact. Yeah, it's another movie trope. And yes, oh my god, this is the worst. This is the worst thing. So, don't you love it when a strong, independent young woman just stops a huge honking man running up to you with a single touch? Don't you just love that? She just puts her finger, not her hand, her fingers on his chest, and he literally drops to the ground.
Like he's fucking
Thanos
in Avengers Infinity War with Mantis, doing her whole
But
mind
Mantis has psychological empathetic powers where she can influence the emotions and or thoughts of others to a degree. She's not a telepath per se, but he's an empath. What the fuck is Maya doing? He's literally running up to her. She touches him with 4 fingers, her index and middle finger for both hands. It glows, and he drops to the fucking ground. This man has fought in the show Echo was introduced to. This man fought Kate Bishop, literally taking arrows to the face, to the body, and to the knee. He's like, I took an arrow to the knee. He's like, no, I kept fighting. And he did. And then took a bullet to the face and survived. 'Tis but a scratch. And yet she touches him with 2 fingers to his fucking chest. And he's like, ah, the pain. And he drops to the ground. Sorry, I hit the table. Drops to the ground that dramatically as I drop my mic.
Yeah,
and what?
This is you can't even.
You can't pretend that this was good at all.
This show has Mary Sue and pretentious feminist propaganda written all over it.
Everywhere. It's so I can stop him because I'm a woman. It's so stupid. You want a strong, independent young woman? Go back to Iron Man 2 with Black Widow and have her fucking crawl over, punch him. She's an assassin. Attack his pressure points. Do something. Poke him in the
This,
eyes, like
this should be like this is
something.
the thing. At the very least, it should be difficult. Like when we had the season 1 finale of Daredevil,
Make a believable
and
shock.
yeah, and Daredevil and Kingpin throw down in that alleyway.
Oh,
Like
oh God, yes. For fuck's
that's
sake.
not. Yeah, like that's not an easy fight. Like
But that's not a hard ask either. It's the bare minimum. Just to ask for that. Ask for a believable fight scene between two opposing characters, dichotomies, it's ideologies. And nope, I stopped them because I'm a woman. And that's why I genuinely believe any of the Native Americans used to be aliens or from another plane of existence or something, and all of that is arbitrary and never gets explained. Because I honestly believe they didn't think about it. It didn't matter to them. They just needed an excuse to have certain things feel the way, not fit, feel the way they wanted it to feel. And if we explain it, we create limitations, but we're women, so we have no limitations, even though we're oppressed. So that's why it's never explained. I genuinely believe that's why it was never explained. It was never explained away. It was never understood what the powers can do, why they can do the things they do, where they actually come from, how many Native Americans actually have this power. Do you have to be a
yeah,
direct
why is
descendant
it
of
arbitrarily Maya's lineage?
But that's my
Just
point.
just
You're
because it's her name
you're
on the
special.
title, does anyone else in the tribe also
I'm
have
so
access to?
I'm so tired of protagonists being protagonists simply because they were born to be a protagonist. I want to go back to a time where we could just watch normal people do amazing shit because they overcame something, they learned something, as opposed to, well, I was born from this, so I'm just better than everyone else. I loved the story of Tony Stark because he's a character who was only born into riches to some extent, but he didn't. His father was a genius, but Tony Stark was clearly, even as a child, more of a genius than his father was. And there
It,
is also a dynamic where they didn't like each other.
it
There's
was
disconnect. And Tony Stark overcame his own struggles by becoming smarter, by doing better. And every single film Robbie Downey Jr. is in post to Iron Man 1, every new suit is overcoming a problem he faced in the previous movie. Every single one. It's to overcome a specific problem. He's learning, he's growing, and he's adapting, and it makes sense, and it's part of his character. And when we write Mary Sue's, or we write characters who, well, I was just born great, go fuck yourself. Because no one is born great. You can be born into a classist system like we are today, where you're born rich and usually born ignorant but like egotistical as well. But nonetheless, that's not an obstacle. Becoming rich is not an obstacle. Kingpin is not an adversary to Daredevil because he has more money. That's an aspect that he utilizes as a tool to where Matt Murdock, as a ethical lawyer, which is hilarious, but an ethical lawyer can't, he can't be, picky about the clients he picks up, but he tries to be anyways because he only wants to represent innocent clientele. Where Kingpin doesn't matter. He just obtains money for the sake of it. But money is nothing more than a tool. It's not a character trait. It doesn't define Kingpin. That's you literally see his story. And Echo actually does a little bit of work here with that fight scene where now she has psychological powers, whatever. She's inceptioning him, but whatever. But we see he comes from nothing, and he made something of himself despite his origins, his heritage. And Maya, it's like, no, she's just born great because she was born of greats. It's stupid, and you can't expect people to legitimately relate to it. Not anyone with half a brain, at least. Everyone thinks they're great, but they're not necessarily because they're born that way. It's terrible, terrible writing. Um, and again, so the magic powers just work arbitrarily because now she has assumption powers, and all she tells him, what does Mai tell him? To let go. Uh, what is Kingpin supposed to let go of exactly? Do you know? Because I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. Let go of the need to be a crime boss to be a mobster?
Is it
Like,
my friend? He saw the last 2 episodes with me. He mentioned maybe Maya's telling Kingpin to let go of all the pain and revenge or something and the anger from when he was a child, and that's the closest thing you can come up like get to a legitimate reason. But at the same time, that's not everything Kingpin was or ever was. Also, more importantly, Kingpin didn't kill his dad because he was angry and wanted revenge. Not really. He killed him because he was beating his fucking mother. And he saved through that, and through that intervention, he saved his mother's life. And this is why Daredevil as a show was so much better, because it wasn't just Kingpin is a bad guy. Kingpin was a bad guy you could empathize with and you tried to understand, because he's a bad guy only because out of utility. I can't care about you and I will kill you because you're in my way. And not because I'm a narcissist, but because I have a very specific, meaningful goal in mind. And this is why I'm doing this. And this is why I'm doing that. And this is why I'm running for mayor now. Power and control was nothing more than a tool for safety that he didn't have as a child, but also to create and build up a community. Because we saw that too. We saw that what he was doing in Hell's Kitchen. He invested in the community to a degree. And yes, there was a lot of shady deals and shit. I'm not trying to praise Kingpin and praise a villain, but this is how you write characters, good or bad. You write them in a way where you're kind of rooting for them. Kingpin is a bad guy, but you can empathize with him and you can find endearing qualities in Kingpin. There's nothing endearing or apathetic or any reason for me to root for Echo at all.
nope.
And it's terrible. And what's worse, and I think is it spits in the face of Daredevil, which is she inceptions him because she can do that now. And she tells him to let go of the thing that made him so powerful, so important, and so integral in Daredevil in the first fucking place.
You know what's
And
funny?
tries to undermine it.
D'Onofrio has talked about this in interviews.
Mhm.
That doesn't really work. He's like, it gave Kingpin some insight into himself, but like he's not like
Yeah,
some
right.
pacifist now.
Yeah.
Who's gonna go off and start a knitting company or something like.
No, and we see that. We see that it clearly didn't work. She didn't get what she wanted out of it. Um, and honestly, we don't know if it actually did anything. But what pisses me
Yeah,
off,
it's all the
but what
same. It's still a really goofy ass ending. It's a really goofy ending. It's
no,
so weird.
not only is it goofy, it's incredibly disrespectful because what you have is we won the day and we won the fight because I made this grown man who's a mob boss, who's a surrogate father, who's more powerful, who's more lived experience than me, who has all these people around him and on his corner because they fear him. I made him cry like a little baby, and he left Oklahoma and like driving away, and that's how we won. Seriously?
And yeah,
Seriously?
that's the last we see of Kingpin going into Born Again, where he's supposed to be like a menace and like that same interesting and dangerous mob boss that he's always been. Like
Mhm.
it is insanely disrespectful to the character to
He
have that weird ass goofy ending with him
he
where it's like,
literally drives off in tears, and that's how they won. That's how they defeated the bad guy, even though again she's supposed to also be the bad guy.
I don't know how this is like verging on
Yeah.
more feminist than Handmaid's Tale. Like we sent the big bad man, patriarchal man off crying, and we won the day without having to really do much of anything.
Again, it's and this is why I'm so frustrated because it's just like you're through every step of the show, whether it's you literally saying the part out loud, which is like the Tolka scenes where it's um she's just as capable as her, and she's a mighty warrior in her own right, just like, or you can just stop telling us she is all these things and you could show us so we can believe it. Or it's Maya who's just can just
That's the
do
thing.
anything and
They
use
don't even fucking
whips
believe
now. And
it.
it's just like it doesn't sound like, and it's no disrespect to the writers themselves, but it doesn't sound like Marvel hired writers who knew how to write.
Or
Or
at the very least, actually had a passion for these characters.
but it's
Um,
one thing, no, but like it's one thing if you don't have a passion for the IP, so you kind of shit on a little bit. But you know you're an experienced writer who knows how to write characters, who know how to write uh 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 um not just characters but character developments and scenes that are emotionally impactful, that actually mean something, that build towards something. And it's another thing to
we
not be invested
really
in
need
the
to
show
wrap
and
this
not know
up
how to
here.
write at all. And I think that's what happened here.
Right. Well, I definitely was not expecting to talk about this show for 3 hours. Um,
And I'll take the blame. I don't care. This show was that bad. I literally had to take notes. It's abysmal. So I'll take the blame on that. That's on. I don't care. Do not watch this fucking show. But if you do, here's the commentary. Here's the director's cut because this is how fucking bad it is. I'm not kidding. Oh
yeah,
god.
this was interesting. I'm not sure what we'll do a podcast on again in the future. Um, probably honestly, Deadpool 3. I don't see myself caring enough to do a podcast about anything in particular coming down the pipe until Deadpool 3. Oh,
Mhm.
Invincible season 2. Whenever they finally start releasing the
Yeah,
second
the
half,
second half. They still don't have a release date for it. Fuck.
yeah, they still don't have a release date for it. They're jerking us around, man. They said early 2024, and we should at least know when it's coming by now. January is almost over, but
Mhm.
yeah, they need to do better with that. But we have season 4 of The Boys coming.
Mhm.
Um, so there's some stuff coming this year that will definitely be worth talking about in a more long form format for you guys. But hope you enjoyed if you listened to all of this, and we'll
Hopefully
catch
you
up.
got a good laugh out of this because if you didn't get it, hopefully we educated you more about Native American. Not that we're experts, but like again, uh, debunking some of the myths this show tries to push to you, and it's not intentional. It's just they're ill-informed, and again, something you mentioned about they're in Oklahoma. They work directly with tribal leaders, and it
And
feels
the
like
director's Native American.
exactly. It feels like the leads late. It feels like any input was given was like, I'll think about it. And it was just tossed in the trash. Like, I'm still going to do what I want. That's what it feels like because there was nothing really Native American about this. There was nothing really deaf about this. There's nothing really missing a leg about this, disabled. There's nothing really villainous about this. The only real bad thing she's ever done was manipulate her cousin Biscuits. That's and peer pressure him to doing shit he's not comfortable with. That's it. Like, it's a shit show. It's a literal shit show. It's so bad. When they literally said echo or echoing in the show the 2 or 3 times, I literally had to laugh. Like, they said they said the name. They said the name in the show and the name. It's like it's don't watch it. But if you do, here's the commentary because it's really fucking bad.